Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of Reddit Podcast Stories, where today, my Karen girlfriend is demanding that I marry her. I'm 30, male. I've been with my girlfriend, who's also 30, for a year and a half. We live together in a house that I bought alone. Honestly, she's an amazing person. She's extremely caring, thoughtful, and beautiful. However, we see life very, very differently. With money, for instance, I make more than double her income, and because of this, I pay the vast majority of the bills, which I'm honestly fine with. She helps out with groceries and some bills, and it works. The problem is that she has lots of disposable income, and she treats it as such. She never has money for the things that she needs. Her car has problems. She needs to borrow money from me. She wants to go on vacation. She racks up massive credit card bills. She generally owes me between $1,000 and $4,000 at any given time, and when she starts paying me back, she inevitably needs to borrow more at some point. She literally spends it all on useless crap, constantly replacing our dishes, for example. She's extremely difficult to communicate with and reacts very harshly to things that make no sense to me. For example, I was engaged before we got together. She knew this. I've had junk mail show up with my ex's name on it, and I got absolutely blasted from her. She threatens to pack up and leave because of things like this, and I don't think I have control over them. And she will not explain why she gets so mad about it. Lots of things like this have been building up. Recently, the straw that broke the camel's back and destroyed my spark for her happened. She talked about marriage, having kids, etc. I asked her why she wants to get married, and she said, because she wants to throw a party. This seemed wildly inappropriate and a weak reason to make such a strong commitment. So I told her I'm not ready to marry her because of the reasons above, and similar things that aren't mentioned for length purposes. She lost her mind, cried, said she was going to pick up, said that things are not salvageable, then changed her mind and wants to work it out now. Am I the jerk? Why are there so many posts like this? OP, I love my partner. They're the most amazing, kind, caring, wonderful person ever. Also OP, they financially and emotionally mistreat me constantly. They stomp my reasonable boundaries and punish me for complete non-issues or just being myself. They tend to out themselves as being irrationally jealous and controlling, selfish, unstable, and constitutionally unempathetic during any sort of hard discussion. There's no way to communicate with them at all when they're upset. Why would you stay with this person if they treat you as you describe, let alone ask if you're the jerk for not marrying them on a whim? The reason she saw a wedding as just a party shows that she doesn't think of you as a person she wants to commit to and build a life with. She thinks of you as someone who is never going to leave her anyway and is great for funding a lavish party. She clearly was trying to manipulate you. Then when it didn't seem to be getting the results she wanted, switch tactics. She knows what she has in you, and of course doesn't want to leave the very cushy life that you give her. At least not until she's locked down what she thinks would be a better prospect. My brother proposed to my fiancé, his ex, and I'm ticked off. I'm 28, male. My brother, Mark, who's also 26, used to date my fiancée, Jen, who's 26, a year ago. For context, they dated back in August of 2022. They were only together for a month before he broke things off with her because he was bored of being in a relationship and never really wanted to settle down anyway. At the time they were dating, I was in a different state, so I had no idea he even had a girlfriend, and I had no idea who Jen was until I met her. Jen and I met at a bar when I moved back in October, and we hit it off really well. She was easily the most beautiful and intelligent woman I've ever met, and we met up a few times before we made it official. Fast forward to December, I finally bring her up to my family and suggest they meet her at Christmas. They knew that I was in a relationship, but I'm not the most open about my personal life, so I kept details about her to a minimum until I knew how serious we really were. My parents asked to see pictures, and they started passing my phone around the dinner table. Mark saw it, and he blew up, calling me a bad brother for dating his ex-girlfriend, and he demanded that I break it off with her. I refused. When I asked Jen about it, she confirmed they dated and gave me the details about their breakup. It took a few weeks, but eventually Mark stopped bringing up me dating his ex, and I thought he was over it. On Jen's birthday this year, I took her out to a fancy dinner with both of our families and her closest friends, and I asked her to marry me. Mark flipped once again and blew up about me proposing to her, which I and my sisters immediately shut down. The incident happened this past weekend. Mark has been pretty quiet about the whole thing for the last 2 months. I didn't see him much and figured he went low contact with me, which I had no problem with. Then he invited me and Jen for a family dinner at his apartment with my parents and sisters. I thought it was weird, but my parents and sisters were also going, so we agreed to go. The dinner was nice, nothing too fancy, and we moved to the living room to talk. After 30 minutes into normal conversation, Mark stood up and told us he had an announcement. He made a long speech about being happy to have his family around for his big moment. Then he got on one knee and pulled out this cheap ring while asking Jen to marry him. Jen was confused and obviously uncomfortable and demanded that he put it away and stand up. My dad tried to make a grab for Mark, but I got to him first and I bopped him. I won't repeat most of what was said, mostly because I was too angry to even listen to most of it. But he said something along the lines of wanting to show me that Jen wasn't really into me and just wanted to get back at him. Before it could get worse, my parents rushed me out and promised to talk to him. It's been a few days since it happened, and I'm still ticked off. I don't know what to do at this point. I'm scared Jen might have second thoughts marrying me because of this. Any advice? I want to clarify a few things that I saw in the comments. 1. Jen and I are newly engaged. It was one of those feelings where we both knew we were in it for the long run. As far as it is, I'm sure about her. 2. When we met, I was the one who approached her, not the other way around. Whether she knew or had suspicions of us being related, I don't know. I asked after finding out they dated, and she says she had no idea. I didn't have a reason to doubt that, but I can admit this seemingly overreaction on Mark's part does raise red flags. 3. I had no idea she and Mark dated when I met her. Mark and I aren't close at all. We used to be, but as we grew up, we drifted apart and talked less and less. Before I moved back, we didn't really speak much aside from special days like his or my birthday. Jen knew of my family, but not much until I decided I was ready to introduce them to her. When she and Mark met again, I didn't get a sense of any residual feelings on either part. She didn't treat him like a stranger, but she also wasn't overly affectionate with him either. I was told this was a relationship that lasted a month. I didn't think I needed permission from Mark to ask her to marry me, but maybe that was wrong of me. I'm not sure. That being said, I plan to talk to Mark this weekend to lay everything out on the table and figure out what's up. I never asked for his side of their relationship, which is my fault for not doing my due diligence. If anything major or enlightening happens, I'll update, but for now, that's all I have. Update. I called Mark and asked him to meet up with me at my place to talk. I told him I would prefer Jen to be around for the talk as well, but I was cool with it if he didn't want her there. He agreed to talk to the both of us and showed up at my place around noon today. It was pretty quiet for a few minutes before I started the conversation. I apologized for not warning him I would be proposing to Jen, and I apologized for hitting him. He said it was whatever, but he appreciated the apology. I told him what Jen had said about the relationship and breakup when I asked her about it, and I asked him to confirm if that was true. I pretty much said that his reaction throughout the whole thing has been extreme, and I wanted to make sure I wasn't misunderstanding their relationship or downplaying how serious they were. He confirmed that they only dated for a few weeks, and he broke up with her because he lost interest. Jen asked if he was acting like this because he still had feelings or regrets about ending things with her. He said he could admit he thought she was more attractive than when he last saw her, but there weren't any feelings or regrets. He said he just didn't like seeing a girl he dated, even if it was short-term, with his older brother, and as a man, I shouldn't have violated him by pursuing things with his ex. I reminded him that I had no idea they dated, so it wasn't like I consciously did this knowing their history together. He shrugged me off and said it didn't matter. I still should have broken it off. He was adamant that if the roles were reversed, he would have done the same thing, which I doubt. I asked him why he proposed to her if he didn't have any lingering feelings. Basically, to sum it up, he was talking about it to one of his buddies who was around when Mark and Jen dated, and the guy put the idea in his head that maybe Jen knew from the start that we were related and was doing this to get back at him, considering Jen had been hung up on him after they ended it. He and his friend thought it would be a good idea to test it and see if they were right, so he came up with the idea to propose and see if she would dump me for him. Jen asked him to elaborate on why he thought she was hung up on him, and he told her that he had heard she was asking about him following the breakup and still hanging out at the places they used to go, so it was a valid assumption. Then for her to pop up randomly with his brother affirmed his suspicions. Jen told him she'd only asked about him once following the breakup, and she'd been hanging out at those places with friends before they started dating, and she wouldn't avoid them because of a breakup. She also told him she was offended at the idea that she would go as low as to pursue me just to get back at him. He shrugged and gave her a weak apology, but said that she had to see it from his point of view. He asked her if she really didn't know, and she told him that she didn't see the resemblance in us until we were in the same room, and we act nothing alike, so it never crossed her mind, and he said okay. That pretty much wrapped up the conversation. He did tell me before he left that I could take back his invite to the wedding because he can't bring himself to support our relationship knowing he used to date her. I told him he didn't have to worry about that as he was most likely not going to be invited anyway. It's been a few hours since our talk, and I do feel better. My parents aren't too happy about him being uninvited, but they understand that it was a mutual decision and probably for the best. My sisters told me they knew he didn't have a good reason for being a jerk, and they don't blame me for not wanting him at the wedding. As of now, I'm going to limit contact with Mark, and I doubt he'll reach out to me anytime soon either. PSA: It doesn't matter how sure you are about her. Dating for only a year before proposing is a really stupid idea. You're still in the honeymoon phase. Real talk is you don't become fully comfortable and 100% guards down and cards on the table until about 3 years into the relationship. 2 max. Am I the jerk for refusing to cook separate meals for my niece? I, female 42, live with my husband, male 45, and our daughters who are 18 and 16. We live in a different city from our families due to work. A few months ago, my sister asked me if her daughter, Kate, who's 19, can stay with us since she was starting college in our city. She was scared of her daughter moving away for a first time, especially to a big city like ours. I knew Kate from before lockdown times and remembered her to be a smart and sweet kid. I discussed it with my husband and we agreed that she can stay with us. Kate moved in around 2 months back. She was fine, came home on time, let us know her whereabouts, and no partying. The issue was with food. She had turned vegan. Normally, I cook for my family. I cook just one meal for all, and we are all dairy-obsessed people. Milk for cereal, butter and pancakes, cheese and everything, eggs were our staple. Kate needed separate dishes altogether, and we needed vegan substitutes for her. Since those are way more expensive, I told my sister she should give money to Kate so she can buy it. She started telling me how family doesn't take money from family to feed kids. I told her I would feed Kate the same as my other kids, but I won't spend excess money on her. She said that's fine. Since her mom won't buy it, Kate started buying plant-based substitutes with her pocket money. For dishes like pancakes, I made food for her using her ingredients. But every time I made a huge non-vegan meal, she expected me to provide equivalent vegan meals. I drew the line at that. I can't spend so much time cooking another meal. She said everyone else got to eat while she wasn't left with anything to eat. I told her she's free to cook for herself and she hates that idea. It came to a boiling point last weekend when we had a barbecue dinner with friends. She got upset that her salad was very basic. It was good, only with chicken added, and had nothing else to eat. She complained, and I told her that she can go cook for herself. She got even more upset at that and called her mom crying about how I didn't make any good meals for her and expected her to fend for herself. My sister called me yelling at me how I didn't love her daughter and was intentionally excluding her. My parents are also taking their side. Am I the jerk? Did she turn vegan before or after moving in with you? If she was vegan before, did her mother cook her meals? Did she pay for vegan substitutes for her own daughter? I'm just trying to figure out why a 19-year-old adult still feels entitled and expects people to cook lavish meals for her with their own time and money. Not the jerk. OP. She was vegan before she moved in, though my sister didn't tell me that. Her mother bought and cooked vegan dishes for her. Then why doesn't her mother give her the money that would have been used to purchase her food? She was already spending it before her daughter left home, so it wouldn't make a big difference in her income. Why is it that you're family, so you have to cover it so she can keep her own money? OP. The age-old principle of she's staying under my roof, so I should provide for her. Not the jerk. If they could send her to a dorm, they would have to pay for her food as well. It was not good enough that you opened your home to her, but you had to cater also? Not sure which aspect of your family is more entitled, your niece, your sister, or your parents. None of them want to spend a dime, but expect your house to be like a resort for her, that you don't get paid or tipped for. Maybe the best approach is telling them the housing situation isn't working out. There will be more howling until they realize there is no alternative that will cost them less. For some, everything is never enough. Am I the jerk for wanting to leave my boyfriend of 6 years, knowing he may be proposing soon? I, 23 female, have been dating my boyfriend, 25 male, for almost 6 years. My boyfriend and I started dating my freshman year in college in 2017. Everything was going really well, and everything just sort of fell into place. It just felt right. Until the lockdown hit in 2020, and we all got sent home to finish college virtually during my senior year. We've been in a long-distance relationship since then, because I then began attending graduate school for speech therapy. To save money, I lived with my parents, and he lived with his, who lived 3 hours away from me. When the long distance began, my only ask of him was that we be married when I graduate in August of 2023. In our families, it's super important that we're married before we live together. He saw this as reasonable and claimed it was something he really wanted. Then we could get married and get a place together once I'm done with school. Here's the dilemma. He still hasn't proposed yet, like we had agreed. He expressed that he was planning on talking to my parents to get their blessing before planning the proposal. He initiated a conversation with my parents about next steps in November of 2022 and hasn't said anything up until last week. He's been at my house 3 times and never sought after opportunities to say anything. He's putting it off, and there's only one reason why he would. It would be one thing if he had expressed that he wasn't ready for marriage, whether that be emotionally ready or financially ready. But he's been talking a lot about engagement for the last 2 years, getting my hopes up, and then nothing happens. One important thing to note is that he's an only child with a mom who has a meltdown when the idea of marriage or moving out of town is even considered. She's been an issue throughout our entire relationship because she's constantly trying to create division between us, whether that's talking crap about him to me or vice versa. He has now begun expressing fears of leaving his parents when he is the only one there to take care of them, and he's afraid of what they'll think of him if he leaves for a career opportunity or for me, who is seeking career opportunities in speech therapy in various locations. On to his conversation with my parents, which is the biggest concern I'm having. First, he told my parents he was planning on proposing this summer. He then expressed that he was afraid of commitment and sacrifice. My dad asked him what he meant, to which he responded, "Well, I like my me time and my space to play video games and watch sporting events, which my parents give me. I'm scared to give that up for a wife or to help with kids." This kind of broke me because he would have never said anything like this before moving back home with his parents. He's extremely comfortable with his life and doesn't want to change it. But I want to change mine. I want to move out and get an amazing speech therapy career opportunity when August rolls around. I want to get married and have kids. This was something I had wanted to do with him, but with his unsupportive parents and some of the concerns he's expressing to everyone but me, I'm really scared to proceed with him and include him in things such as apartment or job hunting. Things haven't been the same as they were before we started long distance for a long time. I've been trying to remain optimistic through all of this in case things do go back to the way they were once we get a place together. But the optimism is fading. I thought I could have the best of both worlds, the career and the guy, but I'm stuck at a crossroads instead, and I'm incredibly stressed and heartbroken. This is supposed to be an exciting time, but it's just dreadful because of all of this. Any thoughts? Please be brutally honest, especially if I could have proceeded differently with this. Edit. The main issue is that he hasn't proposed. If he had concerns about a marriage or wasn't ready, he needs to tell me. But he either hasn't told me, or whenever I've asked, he brushes it off and says he wants to marry me. The main issue is his consistency. He says one thing, but doesn't demonstrate it through actions. I've had conversations with him about this, and he just says he'll try to do better. As far as the video games and sports go, I really try not to be nitpicky or controlling about what he does in his spare time or how much of it he does. I've been gaslit and hurt in previous relationships for being too controlling, so I try to be extra conscientious of that. I'm supportive of him hanging out with the boys, try to get to know them as well. Although these things aren't my go-tos, I try to watch sporting events with him and play video games with him to try to understand the hype. Update. Holy cow, y'all. It took me 4 months, but I did it. I ended it. Over the last 4 months, all our relationship has been is just talks of either marriage, engagement, or taking me out on a date, when he never actually does the things he says he'll do. Whenever I wanted to have a conversation about serious stuff, like where to live, finances, having kids, etc., he brushed it off like it was nothing. This was how I knew he was not planning for the future. Apparently, his parents know more about his financial situation than I do. I approached them about it, and they showed me how many loans he has. It was astronomical, and he hasn't paid a dime since he graduated from college 4 years ago. And he has 0 expenses, nothing. This made me upset, because not only did I have expenses, but I was working insane hours to pay for school and for my expenses. And he didn't make any attempts to have a stable, consistent job over the summer. At that point, I was done. It took a lot of courage to leave, especially considering the problems I have with his mom. I thought she'd go off on me for dumping her baby, but I finally did it this past weekend. Darn, did I dodge a bullet. The whole conversation was horrible. I felt like I was witnessing a toddler throwing a tantrum. He was crying, pacing, throwing stuff that I bought him, etc. He accused me of cheating when I told him the long-distance thing was affecting my feelings for him. He tried to bribe me with stuff to stay with him, like a Nintendo Switch. He guilted me for all the dates he took me on over the summer and in college years ago. Keep in mind, I was paying for undergrad and graduate school out of pocket and had no money. He accused me of never wanting him to be happy. The worst part, when I told his mom we broke up, It was essentially a "don't let the door hit you on the way out" kind of thing. She basically said, "Sorry y'all broke up. Have a good life. Sayonara, Sammy." To be honest, I was hoping she'd yell at me or go off on me, just so I could see her stick up for him a little bit. Just to show me that she truly cares about his well-being and not just her own for whenever he decided to leave her. I'm sad and extremely anxious because I left something that was comfortable and don't know what the future brings. I hated hurting him, but he has also inflicted a lot of pain and doubts into my mind. My fiance only realized that he couldn't find his passport the night before our honeymoon, and now we can't go. Context: a family member gifted this trip to us for our wedding. It's the only nice thing we're doing for the occasion because otherwise we're going to just go to the city hall and have dinner with family. After this year's ongoing strike and a bad financial year before that, I've been the sole breadwinner, and while he's been very helpful around the house, it's starting to breed resentment and fear in me. I'm so nervous that this event will only be gasoline on that fire. Could you please give me some perspective, Reddit? My fiance is so kind and we get along so well and I love him dearly, but these lapses in judgment are beginning to grind me down. This was the kind of trip that we'll never be able to afford on our own, so I'm feeling this hard. Update: thank you to those of you who called him irresponsible because you're really appealing to the anger in me right now. I wrote this post in the middle of the night as we were still looking for the passport. Hope remained that we might find it, but we didn't. It's the weekend, so there's no chance of getting it until Monday. We called one agency and they said they no longer do day of passports after lockdown, but there's a chance we might be able to get into the federal office on Monday or Tuesday. I honestly should have gone alone, but the one detail I left out above is that his aunt and her family were also going on this trip, and I felt uncomfortable joining them without him. We'll update Reddit on whether or not I end up making it on Tuesday. I'm still really emotional, and I'm perhaps not acting too rationally right now. Update 2. After my therapy today, we continued to talk out some of the major themes of this mishap. His lack of preparation, how this ties into how hard it's been that he's not working. By the way, he does actually work and proactively looks for work. It's just that he's in a very difficult industry and there's some complexity that I won't go into. How I tend to imagine the worst possible outcome, and as many of you have pointed out, should continue to consider how making marriage work means working with each other's strengths and weaknesses. Also, want to call out that he has only traveled internationally as an adult once before, so there was a certain amount of ignorance that's forgivable on his end. Plus, we're both neurodivergent creative types, so this is the type of behavior I need to come to expect and decide if I can put up with. I think I can. I just need to be more proactive about helping him in spots where he's weak versus judging him and testing him to see if he'll succeed. Since many have asked, yes, he did apologize and admit to his role in this situation. It's all his fault. He keeps assuring me that he'll make it up to me throughout the week. His aunt emailed and told us that it all worked out in the end. She gave the room to another family member, our flight was refunded, and she assured us that she'll reschedule the trip whenever we're ready. I am, however, punishing him by forcing him to allow me unlimited reign over the TV. BBC historical miniseries are on the slate for the rest of the weekend. I'm also trying to figure out if I should go back to work later this week or take all these days off. I hate to ask this, but are you sure it's not deliberate? My mom's last husband had such terrible luck with passports, including losing it while on holiday. Once he had got his hooks in properly, he literally shredded his passport in front of her to punish her so they couldn't go on a cruise that she had planned and paid for. In the end, I went with her instead. But anyway, under normal circumstances, if this happened to someone, they'd be frantic, mortified, hugely apologetic for ruining your chance at a lovely trip. Was he any of those things? Go on your own and have a nice relaxing time. Tell him to sort himself out and start taking some responsibility in the relationship, and tell him he needs to go back to work. Am I the jerk for saying I would never have chosen my husband as the father of my baby? I, 37 female, and my husband, Liam, 30 male, have 2 kids. I'm currently pregnant with our third and last. Liam is a wonderful husband and a fantastic father. I was out at brunch with a few friends of mine. I was telling them a funny story about my cravings and how Liam had made a cake from scratch for it. A friend of a friend, Paige, said that I chose so well and that she should have put as much thought as I did into choosing him. I have a reputation for being really thorough and thinking things out before doing anything, the responsible one. I told her that I never would have chosen Liam to be the father of our first, but I am so grateful he was. I was very lucky. Our pre-marriage life was messy. I was with another man, Dave. Dave was a steady, reliable man, and we had been together for years. Dave made a new friend who was Liam, and I could not help but absolutely despise him. According to him, Liam made Dave feel young again, and he was desperate to reclaim the sense of youth he lost by being responsible since he was young. He spent all of his time with Liam and other bros. Dave would spend every night out partying until 2 or 3 a.m. He spent his entire paycheck and some of my paychecks on wrestling videos and online gambling. He bought a motorcycle. He used our savings to buy crypto. He shaved his head bald. The last straw was him spending $20,000 of my savings to travel. Throughout this, Liam was incredibly disrespectful to me. Dave broke up with me when I asked him to stop hanging out with Liam and his other friends. He immediately moved in with a girl I had concerns about. I felt deeply hurt, and for the first time in my life, I felt like hurting someone in return. I was miserable, out of my mind, and called Liam over. I wanted to ruin their friendship like he ruined my relationship. He was annoyed at Dave for something else and was down for anything. I woke up the next morning realizing that I made a huge mistake, but it was incredible. Unfortunately, my bad decision caught up to me and I got pregnant. Ironic since I had always wanted to have kids, but I was told that I was infertile. Both Liam and I were against kids out of wedlock, and we had a small wedding. I was ready to grit my teeth and make the best of our marriage, but surprisingly, Liam turned out to be an incredible partner and father. If it was a mistake, it was the best mistake of my life. Paige was very offended that I said Liam wouldn't have been my choice initially. She said I was making myself superior. She said that she lost respect for me and would never talk to me again. She also messaged Liam to tell him what I said. Was what I said really that bad? Edit. I should probably be clear, but I'm a lot more unfiltered on Reddit than here. I just said that while we knew each other before, Liam was basically a one-night thing, which is true. My other friends know the truth because a few of them were there when it all unfolded. Dave was furious at first, which is understandable, but we are cordial to each other. I did not get my money back, unfortunately. Not the jerk. I'd imagine Liam feels the same. This is a wild story, but the best part is that it worked out for you guys. Lose Paige as a friend. That's a weird response she had, in my opinion. Father covers for his new wife is surprised when I cut him out of my life. Recently, I've come to learn that T, my stepmother, has only been around 8 years and whom I don't care for, stole $768 from me, 32 male. When I spoke to my father, all he could do was complain about how many problems this is causing him, the stress on his heart, and how it's damaging his relationship. He didn't apologize for what she did. He just made the phone call about himself. For a phone call that lasted an hour and a half, I probably spoke for 15 minutes or less. I told him we could talk about it when I get there and figure something out. He then suggested flat out that I can help him work to make back the money. Yes, sure. Let me perform physical labor to earn the money that your wife stole from me and pocket you another $900. That sounds great. I was coming in from out of state for a different reason and already planning on staying at the house. This is my childhood home, with my room still furnished how I left it, like my clothes are still in the dresser for when I visit. Plane tickets purchased, and I send him the confirmation date. The next day, he texts me back that I'm no longer welcome at his house, that it's time I grow up and seek health care somewhere else, and that he just needs to know where to send the money. This throws all of my appointments into the void, and I had to cancel and rebuy plane tickets because of it, and now I'm staying with other family. I know he did it to protect my stepmother from the confrontation of facing me in person. She crumbles to dust if people raise their voices around her. For reference, this woman is in such need of therapy that I cleaned and rearranged the kitchen one morning, and T started crying and claimed that I was kicking her out of the house by making it not hers. All I did was do dishes and organize and clean the spice cabinet and pantry. He keeps saying that it's for his health, that I'm not there, and that it's too much stress. I have my own money and transportation and provide my own food. The duration of the trip was 2 weeks. I block him and my stepmother on everything. I ask my family to no longer speak to my dad about me. This is all after a lifetime of mistreatment and narcissistic BS from my dad. Now I hear through the grapevine that he's shocked, just couldn't believe I'd do this to him. My sibling already no longer speaks to him because of similar things, and him telling my brother to grow up and quit being a wimp after my sibling set a boundary with him. I had warned him before that if he kept up in his ways, he'd have no one to take care of him when he's older, and he didn't listen. If that wasn't enough, my late mom's last words to him were, "Don't let the family fall apart." Way to go, Dad. Wild Karen demands to use my wheelchair in the antique store. Cast. We've got me, we've got Nils, an old man, though he doesn't speak, and we've got Harriet, Karen. My husband and I rent a display space in an antique/consignment store for our collective side hustles, I quilt and crochet. My husband sells custom die-cast cars and diorama supplies. Every few weeks we go in and restock our space. This store is very large and can be a bit of a maze, and the store has designated rest stops throughout the aisles. One is across from our space. The store does not provide mobility aids for customers, so it is a bring-your-own policy if you need a walker or a wheelchair. I'm a wheelchair user as I'm paralyzed. My husband and I were at the store restocking the space. My husband had just left to take one of our totes out to the van, leaving me in our space sorting through one of my tote bags. When I hear someone huffing behind me, I don't really pay too much attention to it, thinking that someone might have been taking a break at the rest stop. I was just finishing laying out my sets on the table in our space when the person at the rest stop decided to talk to me. "Do you know if the store has wheelchairs for people to use?" I look up from my task and I see an elderly couple across from our space. The old man is standing next to the bench looking kind of annoyed, while the woman has flopped on the bench in an "I can't take another step" kind of way. I honestly was concerned that she might have been having a medical issue as she was rather plump. "Are you okay?" I ask, about to tell her or her partner to use the phone above the bench to reach the staff desk for help. "This store is too big," Harriet exclaims. "I can't walk anymore." Me. "The store has a chair for medevac use. One of the employees can bring it out to you if you need help leaving." Harriet. "But we're not done shopping." Me. "I don't think they have wheelchairs to borrow. They've had issues with rowdy kids riding mobility scooters, so they don't provide them anymore. But if you use the phone above you, you can ask a staff member. Just dial 1 and it will connect you to the staff desk. There's a sign next to the phone that states this." Harriet seems to be thinking about her options, so I go on about my work. Nels wanders down the aisle, possibly looking for an escape route. Harriet. "What about the wheelchair you're sitting in?" Me. "This is my personal wheelchair. It doesn't belong to the store." "Can I borrow it?" What? Surely she's not asking to take my chair to go shopping. Harriet. "I want to use the wheelchair. You're young enough that you can stand to walk for a bit. I'll bring it back." Me. "Ma'am, I cannot stand at all. I've been a paraplegic since I was 12. This wheelchair is not store issued. It's my personal property and it cost a lot of money. If you call the staff, maybe they can let you use the medical chair, or maybe they know of one someone has in their space that you can buy. But I will not give you my chair and I cannot help you." At this point, I've rolled out of our space. I decided to head towards the vendor door and just leave. Rumor has it, Harriet is still sitting on the bench waiting for someone to give her a wheelchair. Try to steal my legally rented parking spot? Enjoy getting fired. I'm a professional driver. As such, on the roads in the US, there are different truck stops throughout the country that has a pay-to-park system, usually about 10 to 20% of the lot marked off as reserved, with each space running from $15 to $25. The truck stop where this took place had parking for $17, which is relatively cheap for a guaranteed spot. The spots are reserved for 24 hours, starting at 4 p.m. local time and extending to 3 p.m. the following afternoon. I knew that I would have a late night delivery, so I came to the truck stop around 3:30 and paid for a reserved spot. I told the manager on duty that I had a delivery up the road that night and would be back once delivery was completed, but should still be able to clear out the spot by the next afternoon, today. She told me that this was okay and she would mark the spot as sold when I left. That way, if someone else comes in trying to reserve that spot, she could consult her notes and deny the sale. 11:15 p.m. rolls around. I take off for my delivery. I don't get out of that facility until 2:30 a.m. the next morning, this morning. So I groggily drive back to the truck stop to reclaim my paid-for spot, only to find that the reserved parking spaces are all full. I call the manager on duty and after giving her my info, inform her that all of the spots are full and that someone has parked in a spot and hasn't paid for it. She sends her other employee out to start checking trucks. The culprit was from a company that is known for their bright orange trailers, and he was a company driver. The other employee starts banging on his door to inform him that he's parked illegally and he has to move. Meanwhile, I can see the commotion from my mirror with my vantage point in the fuel island, where I had been instructed to temporarily park. The driver answers the door with a bottle of Heineken in one hand and some sort of smoking implement in another. I know what it is, but for the sake of the mods, I'm not going to say it. I decided to roll down the window to hear the commotion, and I hear the employee tell the driver to either move or he will get the towing company and police involved. This driver is flat out irate that someone had the audacity to tell him where he can and cannot park, so he slams the door on the employee, threatening him. Employee calls the police and the tow company, and the police show up first. I had worked for this company before, so I know their policies, and more importantly, what they can and cannot have in their trucks. Alcoholic beverages are not allowed in the cab. Anything that isn't a cigarette or a cigar and a lighter, also not allowed. The coup de grace, a pew-pew of any kind, absolutely not allowed, and absolutely not loaded. This driver had all of that and some other not-so-legal substances in his cab, so he was hauled away in cuffs. His truck was hauled away on a wrecker. I made a call after the commotion died down to the company's safety director and informed them that their rig will be in an impound lot and their driver is going to jail over the not-so-legal stuff he had in his truck. She thanked me and said that he will definitely lose his job, especially over the alcohol and the other not-so-legal stuff. I guess he played the mess around and find out card, and it bit him in his career. Am I the jerk for interrupting my son's date so he could pick up his sister? I'm a single father, 43, to 2 kids, Max, who's 17, and Liza, who's 8. I usually have Liza in after-school clubs so that I'm able to pick her up after work. However, last evening I was given some work that had me working overtime. I did try my best to negotiate out of it, but my manager told me that the assignment was to be completed by that night, so I just did it. It was nearing towards 6 p.m., and I knew I wouldn't be able to make it to Liza, so I called Max and asked him to pick her up. He responded by saying that he couldn't because he was on a date with his girlfriend for their 6-month anniversary. I told him that I understood, but that I really needed him to get Liza and that I'd make it up to him for interrupting. He just angrily turned off the phone, and I thought that while he was mad, he had just decided to go pick her up. 30 minutes later, I receive a call from Liza's school on where I was because the school was close to closing down and no one was there. Luckily, one of Liza's friend's mothers said that they'd drop her off and it was all good. However, I don't really like it when Liza goes off with that particular friend. Not because of the friend, but because of the mother. She has this habit of asking math questions in the car that she knows Liza is unable to answer and then criticizes her over it. It's all just very mean. I called Max and asked him where he was and told him he was in big trouble when he got home. He just told me that he was busy and to leave him the heck alone. He came home at around 9 p.m. and I told him he was grounded and that he wasn't allowed to use the car for a good 3 weeks. At that, he got all mad and said that it wasn't his fault I was failing as a parent and unable to afford someone to collect Liza. Just want some insight on the situation. Was I being too harsh, and am I the jerk for interrupting his date? Edit. This is the 3rd time I've asked Max to pick up his sister in the span of a year and a half. Some people are asking why I don't have a nanny. Money is tight. Max and Liza's mother are not present in their lives, and no, I do not think of socializing myself with the parents at Liza's school. I'm at work most times, so I haven't found time outside of the yearly parent meetings. Please refrain from insulting my son. Not the jerk. You're not failing as a parent. You had to work overtime, not out drinking or messing around. Your son was in the wrong here for not helping, turning the phone off, and calling you out for it. But you two need to talk about this and discuss expectations. If you expect him to be part of the contingency plan, you need to be crystal clear on that, and what happens to car privileges when he doesn't. Dad was at work. He didn't deliberately ruin son's date. It was an exceptional work-related situation, and he needed son to step up as a family member to pick up sister. It seems Dad does his best to let his son be free, with enrolling his daughter in all sorts of activities to help keep her busy until he finishes work. Son could have stepped up on this one. Not the jerk, Dad, and good thing you grounded your son for his entitled behavior. Posts like this make me feel hopeless for us as a society, as a species. You'll get a ton of responses from people who haven't raised kids. Many still are kids, and they haven't been taught responsibility and family. Asking your son to help on an unexpected situation is not and should not be a problem. Your son's response is entitled and gross, honestly. While being disappointed at the interruption would be fine, even appropriate, hanging up on you is disrespectful, and refusing to help is selfish and disgusting. Like societies, families only work when everyone contributes. Your son using your car is a privilege, not a right, and it's up to you to extend that privilege to him or not. The hanging up on you and the disrespectful way he spoke to you is all on its own enough reason to, at the very least, suspend that privilege. You do not have to tolerate disrespect, no matter how upset he was. Also, financial woes do not indicate how good or bad someone is at parenting, something your son is going to be painfully aware of very soon. If you give him money for allowance or anything else, help him learn by suspending that privilege as well. This is a teachable moment. Let him see there are consequences for his choices. Please, I implore you to ignore the ridiculous comments here that are characterizing asking for help as anything other than that. You should be able to ask your family for help, including your nearly grown son. Do not listen to anyone who says otherwise. There's a difference between asking for help in an unexpected pinch and forcing him to be a regular unpaid babysitter. Do not listen to this BS. You're not the jerk, and I hope you stick to your guns about your car privileges being suspended. His behavior was selfish and disrespectful, and he needs to experience consequences for that. Also, inform your employer that you have responsibilities at home that take precedence, and you require advance notice of any extra hours required or you won't be available. They cannot expect you to scramble to find childcare at the last possible moment. You're the jerk. Don't be surprised when your son goes no contact with you. Hate to break it to you, but your kid is your responsibility, not his. You can't make your son fulfill the role that you signed up for just because it's convenient for you. You're basically teaching him that he has to let people walk all over him in life. Is it okay for you to ask if he's available to pick her up? Sure. But if he says no, you need to learn to take no for an answer and stop being a controlling jerk. No refunds once you've stepped out of the store? Fine, I won't step out of the store. This happens in a large store in a European country. When you purchase something from them, and for any reason want to return the item, their policy is that they never give money back. They only give you a voucher redeemable same day only. I went to the store today and I purchased quite a long list of items. I got home, my wife looks at them and says we don't need some of them. I go back to the store, barely 20 minutes passed. The returns manager smiles at me as I tell her I just purchased there and I would like to return them. She tells me that I stepped out of the store so she can't refund, only gives me a voucher and that I must buy something else. I'd already bought everything I needed. Then she tells me to take the products home and keep them for the next time I would need to buy something. Then I can come and get the voucher and redeem it. Imagine keeping a pair of shoes in a bowl and remember to bring them with you the next time you happen to need something. I tried to reason, but she was adamant. Those are the rules. You stepped out of the store. You don't get a refund. And then it clicked. I asked, so if someone wants to return an item without leaving the store, they get the money back? Yes. You see where this is heading. Malicious compliance kicks in. I asked to return the items and get the voucher. I take the voucher, go inside the store, find a product to exactly the same amount. I buy it with the voucher. Right after the cashier, there's the returns manager. Straight from the cashier, I go to her, hand her that random product I had just bought, and say, I would like to return this. I don't want it, and I never left the store. She's looking at me with barely contained rage in her eyes. I kid you not. The awkward pause was getting longer, and then the manager comes along, looks at us, and I smile at him and say, I never left the store, and I would like to get a refund for this, please. He nods. Silent and not looking at me, she proceeds to refund me the money in cash. Company policy, right? My mother ruined my life, so I made sure she ruined hers as well. My mother is a textbook narcissist. So when I, at the age of 6, called my family crying because I knew something was wrong and she didn't love me, my mother decided to punish me for ruining her image. She spun this story to my family. I was a pathological liar, and I was brainwashed by her mother to ruin her life. She effectively cut me off from my family and from the outside world, and made sure I had no internet or cell phone access until I moved out. She prevented me from getting a job and tried sabotaging my efforts to get into college. I went through so much with her. When I was younger, I retaliated in immature ways. But as I got older, I was very, very careful with how I talked to her. I only ever told her the truth. Remember, she convinced herself that I was a pathological liar. So if I tell her the truth, she will now think whatever I said is only intended to hurt her. If I say, you should bring an umbrella today, it looks like rain, she will make a point to not bring one to spite me and get caught in the rain. If a friend said something similar to what I said and was genuinely trying to help her, My mom would think that person is her enemy and remove them from her life. She only has nasty people in her life since she's removed herself from everyone who cared. Some examples. I would tell her about her friends that were plotting behind her back. She didn't believe me and hung out with them even more. They put her name on the payment for an object she doesn't have and has to pay tens of thousands of dollars for. You can't say I didn't warn her. When she had job issues, I would tell her exactly what she was doing wrong and why people don't like working with angry, difficult people. She thought I was trying to hurt her, so she doubled down on her behavior. I hear she's fighting to keep her job. Would suck to be fired right before retirement. You can't say I didn't warn her. She called me looking for advice. She was basically going to fly across the country to go stalk someone, and I told her not to do that. He'll dislike her even more, and he could call the police. I got in touch with her dad and told him to try to stop her. She went because now she was convinced it would work. The poor guy was hiding in his workplace while she was outside crying for him to come outside. Can't say I didn't warn her. I hear she's in therapy now, but it doesn't seem to be working much. I can imagine why. It must be a very upsetting experience to have a professional tell you the same lies your pathological liar of a daughter told you. I think this is how you get someone with kindness. Am I the jerk for reneging on my wife and I's agreement? I, Pete, and my wife, Eve, have an agreement. The agreement says that if one of us has a complaint or suggestion that we want to voice to the other person, we have to preface it with at least 2 compliments. So for instance, if I wanted to approach my wife about leaving her dirty clothes on the floor, I might first tell her that I liked the new shirt she bought and that I appreciated how she did the laundry the previous week, and then I would ask her if she could pick her clothes up. Yesterday, Eve was making some oatmeal chocolate chip raisin cookies, a recipe that she makes often by stirring together an oatmeal cookie box mix with chocolate chips and raisins. I really dislike raisins, so naturally I've never cared for this recipe, and I've even strongly implied my dislike for them on a number of occasions, but my wife never seems to get the hint. So yesterday, while Eve was getting out the ingredients to make the cookies, I started with 2 compliments. I said that it was a nice gesture for her to make cookies for the family and that I liked how she cooked them for the perfect amount of time so that they weren't too hard or too doughy. I then told her that I didn't care for the raisins and that I would appreciate if she made a few cookies without them, since the raisins aren't already mixed in. Eve adds them and the chocolate chips to the box mix. My wife nodded, so I thought that meant she was saying yes. Later, she announced that the cookies were ready to eat, so I came over and asked which ones didn't have raisins. With a confused expression on her face, she asked me what I meant. I reminded her of our conversation earlier. Eve replied that since I had given her 2 compliments on the cookies but only 1 complaint, she thought I enjoyed her raisin cookies more than I disliked them, so she continued with the original recipe. She said they couldn't be that bad if 2/3 of my comments about them were positive. I was at a loss, so I just sat down. I wanted to say something, but I didn't know how to articulate my thoughts. Finally, I decided to just go for it. Eve, I began. But before I could continue, Eve interrupted in a warning tone. Careful, Pete. Remember our agreement. At that point, I lost it. I stood up abruptly and told her I couldn't pretend anymore, and that eating the raisin cookies like this was unbearable, and that my feelings about the cookies were pretty much all negative. I didn't preface that comment with 2 positives, so I broke our agreement here. At first, I thought I was justified, but I talked to my friends who told me that my wife doesn't owe me cookies, and I should just be grateful she made me cookies at all, and I shouldn't have broken the agreement. Eve is still mad at me. So, am I the jerk for breaking the agreement? If your agreement doesn't lead to clear communication and resolution, it's a bunk agreement. Your wife is weaponizing your agreement to essentially shut you up. Forced compliments aren't compliments. Yeah, this 2 compliments thing is a terrible idea. Those compliments would mean nothing to me if I knew they were forced, just so that my husband could criticize something. It's way healthier to just compliment when you like something and have an honest discussion when something is bothering you. In this case, I think they're both being ridiculous, making this big of a deal about some cookies. It's super easy to make a couple cookies without the raisins. Just scoop a few out and add raisins later. But it's also ridiculous to expect your wife to cater to your tastes when you've hinted at wanting them a different way and not just outright asked for a few cookies to be made without raisins. Holy cow, the communication in this relationship is abysmal. In what messed up world are you not allowed to share that you dislike raisins without offering 2 essentially unrelated complimentary preambles? This is so odd, may be well-intentioned to form more positive exchanges, but this feels really extreme and counterproductive to me. Not the jerk. Your wife failed to uphold her part of the agreement you'd made. Depending on your dynamic here, you're both kind of dumb or she's manipulative. Think about it this way. You're not allowed to voice a complaint unless it's prefaced by 2 compliments. But if you preface a complaint with 2 compliments, she then assumes the complaints don't apply. Magic. No complaints are ever made. I suggest you get to therapy to get some intense guidance on how to actually communicate in a partnership. Am I the jerk for telling my brother-in-law to prioritize his family over a Rolex? I'm 35. My brother-in-law, who's 37, is known for impulsively spending frivolously on things for himself and does not have the money for, most recently, a pizza oven, paddleboard, and other costly non-essentials. He very much tries to keep up with the Jones as well. Anything he gets is because he saw someone else buy it because it's trending. He's up to his eyeballs in debt, not making money at his commission job, and currently fighting for his sobriety against a decade-long addiction that he successfully hid from his wife until a few years ago. I honestly believe his brain is stuck with impulsiveness, but he swears he doesn't need rehab or therapy to fix his issues. He has a nice truck with a $600 a month payment that his wife, my sister, who's 36, makes the payments on. Meanwhile, she drives herself and their baby around in the same car she's had since high school. It's not a good car and it doesn't even fit today's safety standards. Brother-in-law hits me up about wanting to buy a Rolex and wanted some advice about buying one. I sold them for a long time. At that point, I carefully worded my response and advised that luxury watches are for people who can afford them after everything else is taken care of, and he needs to prioritize his family before buying one. I also mentioned that in my experience, that people who can truly afford a Rolex could also flush the cost of one down the toilet and not be impacted even slightly, and that we aren't in that economic class of people. I've seen people overextend themselves on these watches just to be able to flex, and that's exactly what he's doing. I perhaps went too far by saying if he has money for a Rolex, then he has money to put his wife and baby in a safer car that was built in this century. He got upset because I didn't tell him what he wanted to hear, but I meant what I said, and there is no one else there to save him from himself. His wife is trying to be very supportive of him and his recovery and usually goes along with his impulse buys because it reduces their fighting and the money isn't going towards something bad. It's not my business, but I worry for my little nephew and considerably less my sister who enables him. I'll accept the jerk designation if I crossed a line here. Not the jerk. You're doing absolutely the right thing, and here's why. My late husband had exactly the same tendency towards reckless spending and also had an alcohol problem and other addictions. He sadly passed away in his 50s, and it was only afterwards that I fully realized that his reckless spending and the other addictive behaviors are all linked and can be symptoms of depression and anxiety. They were all giving him the temporary hit that he needed to feel better in that moment, but then made him feel even more depressed afterwards. Your brother-in-law might need some help with the same issues. My mother is demanding I adopt my niece and nephew. Myself, 26, and my partner, 32, are child-free and wish to remain so. Both of our families know this. Recently, my partner's brother and sister-in-law passed in an accident, leaving their son who's 12 and their daughter who's 9 behind. My partner's parents have been watching them for months, but they cannot do this full-time as they are both in their 70s and have bad health. My partner's sister has also declined adopting the pair as she and her husband are both paramedics and work evenings and weekends. Naturally, they came to us next, and after weeks of discussion, my partner and I decided that we would not adopt them. We both know that we would make terrible guardians, which is the main reason we have decided to be child-free. My partner's family are understandably upset that nobody can take the kids, but they will now be adopted by family on their mother's side. This means they'll be a few hours' drive from all of us. It's important to note here that my in-laws have been incredibly kind during this process, have not pressured us at all, and accepted immediately that we would not adopt them. My mother, on the other hand, has been on my back, saying I'm making a horrible decision and that I need to put the needs of the kids above my own. She has also been mentioning that my partner and I will finally have kids, despite me telling her that that is absolutely not the case. She has always resented the fact that I'm child-free and wish to remain so, and I'm worried that she's seeing the kids as a way of becoming a grandmother. I feel terrible that we aren't adopting them, and I certainly feel like a jerk because of it, but it just wouldn't work out in the long run. I need to know, am I the jerk? Edit. Just for clarification, the kids will be going to their second cousin's house, who they are close with. They're not going into the system. Not the jerk. The kids are going to guardians who want them. It would be bad for them to be with someone who resented them, even more so if they were there because your mother wants grandbabies. Not the jerk. Your mother is not thinking about those kids' needs. She's thinking, yay, now I get grandkids and this will make them want more. Those kids are not going into the system. They're going to family who are capable of raising them. You and your partner knew that you weren't able to do the job of raising them and have made the right decision for those kids. Don't let anybody tell you differently. Am I the jerk for making a joke about my brother's affair at his wedding? When I was in elementary school, I was the type of kid who got disrupts class often on their report card, so I never focused much on school. My district had this system where they would pair high schoolers with younger kids to help them with school, etc., and my mom made me do that after I kept getting in trouble. So my tutor was a freshman, Abby. She would come to our house after school to help me with my homework or something. I barely remember. My brother, John, was the same age as Abby, so they would talk to each other and ended up dating. She stopped tutoring me officially after like a month, but since she was at our house a lot, I also talked to Abby a lot, and we were close as well. Fast forward 10 years, Abby and John got married and had a kid together. 5 years later, John tells me that he's getting a divorce because he's met someone new. It sucked because I liked John and Abby together a lot, but whatever. Then he tells me he had had an affair with his new girlfriend. Also sucks, and I told him he shouldn't have hurt Abby like that, but whatever. I also asked Abby how she was doing, and she wasn't doing well, but she told me she didn't want her to be the reason I have a bad relationship with my brother. However, 2 months before the wedding, Abby calls me and tells me that my brother's girlfriend has been harassing her nonstop. She showed me the texts, and his girlfriend was saying some pretty disturbing things about how she's so much better than Abby, taunting Abby for having to share custody of her kid now, etc., just making fun of her and bullying her. I told my brother about this, and he said he would ask his girlfriend about it. A month later, I asked him if he ever brought it up, and he said he did, but saw nothing wrong with the texts, which upset me. I confirmed that he saw the same texts I saw. Abby apologized for involving me in the whole thing in the first place and encouraged me to still go to the wedding, where my brother asked me to make a speech. The speech went well until I made a joke. The gist of the joke was me turning to his new wife and telling her that if she's learned anything from this, she should know that my brother will never let his wife stop him from finding the love of his life. This got my brother and his wife really mad, and they kicked me out shortly after, and my brother has been calling and texting me nonstop yelling at me. Am I the jerk? You know how vigilantes are technically in the wrong, but we all cheer them on anyway? You're the jerk, but high five. Don't want to work on our assignment? Fine, neither do I. This happened a few years ago in college. I had a class about entrepreneur projects, and that semester was building a business on paper. Basically, we had to figure out what the business would be about, how it would work, and how much money it would need and make. I did this subject in a different class so I could have Fridays free, so I didn't know anyone in there except for one guy. Let's call him Mark. So I teamed up with Mark and 3 other leftover people to be in our group. At first, things were working like a charm, since we only cared about passing the subject and didn't care about our grades. We would each do a part on an assignment. We had to deliver assignments each Wednesday, but we still got max scores on them. Our grade would basically be based upon all of our deliveries, plus some points on individual tests. Important info for later. Didn't take much time for things to go downhill. It reached a point on the project that basically we couldn't modulate the work anymore. The 5 of us would need to sit together and brainstorm about the next steps, more specifically when we reached the point of how we would earn money with our business. Either that, or one person would do everything alone. My group chose the second option, and this would basically be happening for 6 weeks. On Friday, I would send a message on our WhatsApp group like, "Guys, we have to deliver this stuff on Wednesday. When do you want to meet?" Saturday, no responses. Sunday, the 2 checks would turn blue, meaning everyone read the message. No response. Monday, I would send a follow-up message. No response. Tuesday, I would work hard and deliver it alone. Wednesday, 2 hours before the deadline, someone, usually Mark, would send a message. "Hey, how do you guys want to do it?" Which I would answer, "It's already done," and they would thank me and promise to release me from doing anything on the next assignment, which wouldn't happen and the cycle would continue. After 5 weeks, I was fed up and got in contact with the teacher. Her response was that it was too late to do anything now because she couldn't assign me to another group and she couldn't give me special treatment. But she told me to check my grades because most likely I already passed the subject. I looked on it, and with my individual tests, plus what I had already delivered on the project, I got a grade high enough to barely pass the subject. This was kind of messed up, but all the individual tests, and project as well, grades were public. So I saw that no one in my group had passed. The closest one was Mark, but he didn't deliver one of the individual tests, so he would still need to do something to pass. I could, then and there, be the bigger person and say something like, "Guys, I already passed the subject. Start doing something or I won't do anything anymore." But I can be petty sometimes. On the 6th week, I didn't do anything. Wednesday arrived, and Mark tagged me in the group asking if I did anything. I remained silent. Panic started arising. Group members texting me in private. I removed the blue "seen" icon in my WhatsApp and would read the messages in airplane mode so they wouldn't see me online when reading. Except for the group messages, because they would see that I read them regardless of leaving that setting on or off, so I didn't read them. Apparently, when you don't do anything related to the project in 5 weeks, it's hard to figure out what to do next. Deadline passes, I go to sleep. Class was at nights, at distance because of lockdown. Wake up the next day, several name callings, assignment not delivered, and the group threatening to report me to the teacher. My answer was simple. Teacher is already aware. I'm not doing anyone's work other than mine. You can all buzz off. And left the group. At the end of the semester, only Mark and I passed. They got their crap together in the end, but not enough for the other deadweights to pass. Was the sweetest 6. Grades here go from 0 to 10. 6 is the bare minimum to pass. I ever got. Mark never talked to me again, but it was for the best. Karen teacher takes my kid's book because she reads too much. My daughter, Chloe, who's 11, is very active outside of school. She plays soccer, takes swimming lessons, and will play outside a lot with the neighborhood kids. She's very social. Most of her friends are from outside of school. At school, however, she struggles making friends. Chloe has ADHD and was bullied in 3rd and 4th grade for some of that. While it was brought under control by 5th, current grade, these kids still don't play with her and pretty much ice her out. While I don't think they have to play with her, it also means that she doesn't socialize a lot at school. She's okay with this. Her teacher says our daughter often plays alone at recess or reads. My wife and I were not very concerned and explained she's very social and active afterwards. Cleo is a huge reader. She's currently reading her way through my wife's collection of books from her childhood. She loves them and treasures them, knowing that they were her mama's and wants to take great care of them. She came home on Tuesday very upset and worried her mom would be upset with her. I asked why, and she said her teacher took her book away and won't give it back until tomorrow. When pressed for more information, she said she was reading at recess. Her teacher walked over, took the book, and told her to go play. My daughter begged for her book back, and the teacher refused. I quickly assured Cleo that she wasn't in trouble and even called my wife at work to have her back me up. It was quite concerning that she was so afraid, as my wife isn't one to fly off the handle. She's also gentle with Cleo. As suspected, my wife assured her she wasn't upset and that Cleo did zero wrong. The next day, I brought Cleo to school early and walked to her class. No one but the teacher was there. I told the teacher to give me the book. She obliged and tried to defend herself. I told her to save it, and she had no right. There is no rule that Cleo has to do physical activity at recess, and we expressed no concern. The teacher said she was allowed to set boundaries for her class, but I pointed out recess was free time. It's not like Cleo is reading during math. We went back and forth, and finally I said I'd be reaching out to the principal. The issue was resolved quickly. I don't know the particulars, except the principal told me that Cleo is allowed to read at recess, and unless she's actively harming someone or reading during a non-designated time, she wouldn't have any more books confiscated. My wife and I were pleased, Cleo even more so. My cousin is a teacher at this school, just a different grade. She says what I did is hot gossip in the teacher's lounge and that I've been marked as one of those parents. She says the teacher isn't paid enough and I should have just accepted the rule. When I pointed out that we only have 2 months left at this school, Cleo is our only kid and starts junior high in August, that's not a concern. My wife and I feel justified, but we're wondering if I'm the jerk. Not the jerk. And how does a teacher's pay have to do with her overstepping her boundaries? One would think that if she wasn't paid enough, that she'd actually want to relax at recess instead of harassing students. Not the jerk. How can you actively discourage reading and call yourself a teacher? Not the jerk. I did find the bit about the teacher not being paid enough and you should have just accepted the rule to be pretty comical. Your kid should not be mistreated at school because a teacher isn't paid enough. You did the right thing. The teacher was strangely out of line and lacking in compassion. Even if well-intentioned, she effectively punished Chloe, which was wildly inappropriate. Wild Karen loses it in the ER. I'm a veterinary technician and I got injured on the job. A puppy was handed to me and he started flailing and managed to take a chunk out of the cornea of my eye with his claw. It's amongst the most painful injuries I've ever had. I can't see to save my life, so I called my dad and asked him to take me to the ER. He picks me up directly from work. The ER is a madhouse. You know it's going to be bad when there's a handful of staff waiting on an ambulance to arrive. While I'm waiting in the exam room, I hear a page come over the system for a code blue. That means a patient has arrested, and it's an all-hands-on-deck situation for CPR. It's also a reminder that you're lucky to be waiting in an ER because you're not dying. I'm eventually seen by the doctor, and I get a few sidelong glances from the nurse at my scrubs. They seem to notice the large paw print logo embroidered on them from the hospital I used to work at, and they leave me be. After my visit, the nurse who's discharging me points down the hall at the door and tells me to exit that way, and then she gets back to work. As I'm walking down the hall, a woman pops out from one of the exam rooms on my blind side and immediately starts yelling. I almost crash into a desk. Our characters will be concerned mother, mortified daughter, and yours truly. Karen. Do you know how long I've been waiting? Me, gesturing in vain towards the paw print logo. I don't work here. Do you think I'm an idiot? Me, I can get someone to... We've been waiting for 45 minutes in this room. My daughter's tummy hurts. Do you even care about her? Her daughter, who seems to be about 13 years old, covering her face with her hands, looking a bit like she wishes the floor would swallow her up. Me, I can't help. Karen, slowly like I'm an idiot. Her tummy hurts. Do you people even care at all about how long we've been waiting? Me, in disbelief over how someone could be so clueless about triage. Did you not see the man come in that got hit by a car? Just a guess, but hoping to give her some perspective. Is he my daughter? No. Then why would I care? What's wrong with your face? Quit winking at me. Me, just struggling to see over here. My bad. At this point, a security guard shows up. He stands between us and looks at her, then at me. Me, desperately pointing at the paw print logo. I'm a patient. He nods and turns to Karen and starts explaining that I don't work there. I didn't hang around to see the aftermath because, you know, the whole couldn't see part. Some say her daughter's tummy hurts to this very day. Am I the jerk for making my son, who's 16, volunteer at the zoo? I'm divorced, but I have primary custody of my 3 kids, who are 16, 12, and 8. Last week, I took them all to the zoo, and it was mostly a good experience. The 2 younger kids especially liked it, but my oldest, he isn't very fond of animals. We passed a zookeeper working hard cleaning a giraffe exhibit, and to my surprise, my 16-year-old son pointed and said to his brother, "That's why you do good in school, I guess, or you end up scooping crap for a job." He said it loud, too. The keeper and the nearby guests surely heard. I was very embarrassed. I quickly led them away and left the zoo soon after and asked him where he learned to talk like that. I said, "That's not even true. Don't many of them have master's degrees and higher?" But he said he thinks it's gross menial work for people who don't want to work with their intellect and anyone could do it, referencing enclosure cleaning, I assume. I was pretty appalled by how he's learned to look down on manual labor, but particularly zookeeping, because as I understand, it's not even easy. Sure, it's manual labor, but I don't think I could do what those zookeepers do every day. I gagged from our cat's litter box alone. I thought the best way to teach him more respect and appreciation was to sign him up to volunteer at the zoo. So that's what I did. I found a zookeeper for a week program at a zoo not far from here, and I enrolled him. When I told him, he was very upset and said, "Why would you do that? That sounds awful." I told him I thought he had said it was easy, so surely 1 week wouldn't hurt. But he said,
Yeah, cleaning up messes is easy, and that anyone can do it, but that doesn't mean I want to.
His father thinks this was too harsh when he found out. I'm guessing some of his sentiments may be influencing these attitudes, but I decided to stick with it. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Making him do the work will help him realize how hard a lot of these jobs actually are and the amount of effort people put into what they do. The jobs we might see as undesirable are the ones that keep a lot of systems running. To make that comment loudly in front of the zookeeper is just harsh. Oof. My daughter's middle school class took a zoo field trip once, one of those overnight ones, and I was a parent chaperone. In the morning, one of the keepers led us around a bit and then stopped outside the Lion Night House. She pulled out a $10 bill and said, half jokingly, "Okay, I'll give $10 to anyone who can come in here with me and help me clean." So I and 2 of the kids walked up with her, opened the door to the inside, and OMG, we all turned around retching and coughing for fresh air. I didn't know it's possible for anything to smell that bad. The zookeeper laughed like it was nothing and said, "Just kidding, I wouldn't do that to you. Guess I have to clean this alone. Enjoy the rest of your day." I don't think 99.9% of people could do that job like it all. Furthest thing from easy. Not the jerk. Not the jerk. Gotta nip that attitude in the bud early. Not the jerk. That attitude anywhere in life is absolutely disgusting. That being said, my only thoughts would be of concern for the keepers who will be responsible for supervising him for a week. I've been in a situation where I've had to supervise people who thought the work was boring and menial and copped a lot of attitude for it. Not the jerk. Any attempt at stopping the formation of a pretentious snob is a benefit to society. Kid needs to learn some respect. You're the jerk. Your son is 100% correct. Let me spell this out for you and all the other idiots here on Reddit. We live in a capitalism-driven society. Becoming successful here is not based on how hard you work. It's all about how smart you work. You don't get rich working hard. Are janitors and fry cooks rich? No. The rich ones are those who use their minds, just as your son stated. You won't get rich scooping gorilla crap for $10 an hour. You won't even be able to afford a decent apartment with a job like that. I'm just glad he has his father in his life to teach him common sense, since you seem to be allergic to it and punish him for speaking the truth. Am I the jerk for taking my son's access to games for deleting my file? I, 34 female, have a very spoiled 13-year-old son we'll call Junior. In our home, we absolutely love gaming when we have the chance, so Junior has access to all of our game systems. He mostly plays the PS5, but occasionally he plays the Switch. So a big rule I have for my Switch, he broke his on accident, is absolutely no Fortnite. He has it on every system he can get it on, but I don't want it on mine, nor do I have the space for it. I, currently at home with a very needy newborn who won't nap unless I'm holding him. This is after 5 months of strict bed rest while pregnant. As you can imagine, I've been getting a lot of time to play on the Switch, but when Junior asked to use it to play a game, I gave it up. Upon getting it back this morning, I went to play one of my games, Stardew, to find half of my games uninstalled and Fortnite on it. I was aggravated, but whatever. I was stressed and just wanted to relax, so I deleted it and its data. When I launched my game, all of my progress was gone. I checked my other games to find the same. Long story short, I had a stern talk with Junior and grounded him from all of the systems. As you can imagine, he was furious. He yelled, went to his room and slammed his door, all of which woke the baby. Next thing I knew, I got a call from my mom saying that games are meant for kids and I needed to get over it and give her grandbaby his games back. I told her absolutely not and went and grounded Junior from his phone as well. My mom is still blowing up my phone and threatening to come save her grandbaby since I can't grow up and parent properly. Am I the jerk? 13 seems like a perfectly good age to start learning accountability to me. Not the jerk. He's 13. He knows better. He has access to Fortnite on all the other systems, so the fact that he ignored your one wish about gaming is ridiculous. He's lucky you didn't just delete the games and his progress. Oh no, not the jerk. He broke his own Switch, broke your rule of no Fortnite on your Switch, and I'm honestly confused why he'd delete your data from your currently installed games. He should see consequences for his actions. Hope you get some time to yourself soon. Not the jerk. And I'd block grandma from visiting. She's just enabling some very entitled behavior. 13 years old is absolutely old enough to know what he did. Password the crap out of everything and parental lock it all when you give it back, and he has to ask for everything all over again. I'm all for flexible parenting, but trust is earned. Not the jerk. But this is why it's so important you have a man of the house to prevent kids from acting this way. Kids who grow up in fatherless homes tend to run amok and lack proper development. I have a master's in early childhood and family studies because I'm very passionate about this topic. But you don't have to take my word for it. Just ask anyone who grew up in a home with a structured family versus growing up in a fatherless home. The campaigns began in the 60s to convince mothers to leave their husbands and attempt to raise their kids on their own. However, in the upper income brackets, this never became a common thing the way it did among the mid to lower middle class. The elite never forgot the power of the family structure, and it's why they still control over 99% of the wealth and power. Gee, it's almost as if men and women were meant to work together as a unit to raise smart, successful kids. Whoever would have thought? Am I the jerk for not wanting to work around my girlfriend's daughter's nap schedule? My girlfriend has an 8-year-old daughter with a heart condition. I have a 7-year-old daughter and a 10-year-old son. My girlfriend's daughter has very specific needs that can be hard to work around. She can only be with one babysitter, so if we want to go out without the kids, we have to go on the babysitter schedule. If we do want to bring the kids, we have to be at her house by 7 so her daughter can be in bed by 8. Day trips are nearly impossible because she takes a 2 to 3 hour nap at noon, so we either have to be driving for those 2 to 3 hours, we have to leave after she wakes up, or we have to get a hotel or a motel or Airbnb for her to take a nap. Yes, we've actually done this before. Then there's all of the hospital stays to work around too. She stays in the hospital for 2 nights every 14 days. I only have 50-50 custody of my kids, so it's very hard to get the kids together because of all of this. Sure, we can go to Build-A-Bear, the indoor playground down the street from her house, or out for ice cream, but you can only do that so many times before the kids get bored of it. I've been trying to plan a weekend trip to an amusement park for so long, but she wants to make us all work around her daughter's nap schedule. The amusement park doesn't open until 10, but we'd have to leave at 11:30 so she could go back to the hotel for her daughter to take a nap. We could go after she wakes up, so we'd probably get in around 3:30, but the water rides close at 5, so my kids would only get to ride 1, maybe 2 water rides, then another couple regular rides before we'd have to go back for her daughter to go to bed. She wants to do something that would be more accessible to her daughter. She can't go on the bigger rides or water slides, and her having to take a nap would take a lot of time from the rides and games, like the beach, and rent a place where we can do things in the house instead of having to go out all the time. But my kids really want to do the amusement park trip. I eventually told her we're going to do the amusement park. She and her daughter are welcome to join, but we won't be leaving early for naps or an early bedtime. She says I'm dismissing her daughter's needs, but I think she's refusing to take anyone else's needs into account. Edit. My girlfriend just texted me that since I'm unwilling to compromise and find an accessible activity that everyone would enjoy, she booked a last-minute 7-day cruise for herself and her daughter so the kids and I can do whatever the heck we want, but she won't have any part in it. Take your kids to the amusement park. Girlfriend and her daughter can join or not. You had 2 kids before this girlfriend. They should come first. They won't be young for long, and it would be a shame to miss this time of doing fun things with them. It's not their fault you chose this girlfriend. Don't make them suffer. I'm not going to call a single mom with a daughter with heart issues a jerk, but you can have a backbone and put your kids first sometimes too. Honestly, who's in the right or wrong here seems irrelevant to me. If you can't realistically accommodate your girlfriend's disabled daughter without sacrificing your own kid's well-being, emotionally included, then this relationship probably needs to end. No jerks here, I guess. ETA, I'm updating my vote to you're the jerk, based on the fact, which you conveniently left out of your post and admitted to in the comments, that you're trying to split the cost with your girlfriend because you can't afford to take the kids yourself. Did you seriously ask your girlfriend to subsidize a trip without taking her daughter's needs into consideration? It's downright cruel to expect your girlfriend to pay for an experience her disabled daughter can't really enjoy, and to insist on a group trip that doesn't accommodate her daughter's needs. Confirm work or I don't get to do it? Okay. My fiance, 27 male, and I work for the same company, and this actually happened to him a few days ago, but thought someone might get a kick out of it. We work for a trucking company that has dedicated contracted work. I found the job posting, showed it to him, and we both decided to apply for it. The job posting was listed as home daily. When we did the joke of a phone interview, we were told home daily. When we finished our initial training and spoke to the account manager, we were told home daily. This was all nearly 4 years ago. Flash forward 3 years, roughly a year ago, and things started falling apart. The company we work for is rather large, and the account manager has very little sway over the contracts that the company negotiates with the client. It's done by a regional manager. So during the yearly contract update in 2022, the client makes more demands and offers less pay. The district manager just wants to keep the client as a customer and agrees blindly without thorough consideration. The biggest change that matters for the story is there were new stores added to the contract to be covered by the account, and 2 out of 4 of the new stores are not home daily. There were many other changes that happened. That's just the one that most directly affects the next series of events. Due to some other changes that drastically messed up the life of the office workers for the account manager, who had been working for the company for 10 plus years, quits without warning. We get a new account manager, Sarah. A few months later, one of the 2 supervisors, who had been with the company for over 10 years, quits without warning. We got a new supervisor. More on him in a tick. 2 months after that, the second supervisor, who had been there for over 10 years, quits without warning. See a pattern here? So now the account is left with an account manager and a supervisor who both have less than a year's experience, flailing to figure everything out. Back to the bit about home daily. About 6 months ago, my fiance started getting the loads that were not home daily. It took him a day and a half to complete one of the new stores. Day 1, he would go up to the store. Day 2, he would come back and do a super short run to conclude his shift before coming home. The first time he got the new store, he called the supervisor to ask about it. The supervisor was confused what needed clarification. My fiance: will I be getting home? It's a lot of miles for a single day's run. Supervisor: no, you'll be sleeping at the truck stop about 4 hours away from your home. Fiance: I thought I was home daily. Supervisor: who said that? The job was posted as home daily. I was told home daily during the interview, and I was told home daily by the previous account manager at training. Supervisor: well, I don't know anything about that. I wasn't here for any of that. What I do know is that Sarah looked at everyone's contracts, and nobody has home daily in their contract, so everyone is expected to take equal share of the new stores to make it fair. Okay, but I know there are some guys who are hired home weekends because they sleep at the operating center in their trucks and go home for 4 days every so often. Yeah, we have some guys who live out of state. So why aren't they doing the new stores since they don't need to go home every night? As I said, everyone is expected to take equal share to make it fair, and nobody's contract states home daily or weekend home time or whatever. That was never part of the deal. Fiance: I have a family. I took this job thinking I'd have time with them. I wouldn't have taken the job if I knew it wasn't in my contract that I'd be home daily. Well, you're free to get another job if you like, but without 10 days notice, you'll be blacklisted and ineligible for rehire. So are you quitting or not? My fiance angrily did the load, thinking it was going to be a once every now and then thing. Turns out they sent him twice a week, bare minimum. On top of that, most of the miles for the load are back roads, up and down windy mountainous roads posted at 35 miles per hour. We're paid by the miles. He drives an additional 4 hours for this new store for 0 extra pay because the store is in the middle of nowhere with no major highways. He takes a major pay loss on top of the inconvenience of not being able to come home, sleep in his own bed, and be with his family. Then about 3 months ago, the supervisor messages both my fiance and I to say that going forward, we will be expected to confirm all loads and work, or we won't get loads. We receive our work and loads 12 to 24 hours in advance, so we do have some time to confirm them, but it was never a concern before, and we already had a lot of duties to fulfill that it wasn't a priority each day to make sure we typed a message, "Confirm store 1124," at the end of our shifts each day. The supervisor called us both out on it and said that this was an important part of the workflow process. I asked him why it was suddenly so important. He insisted it was always important. I told him that I had never had to confirm loads every day, and I have never failed to show up for work. And on the super odd occasion where I am unable to do a load, It's because of something like a flat tire or a truck breakdown that I'm waiting for repairs, and I was always sure to contact the office and let them know ASAP. Load confirmations are just busy work that is unnecessary on everyone's parts. The boss insists once more it is, and please just do it. At that point, I gave up the argument. Maybe 60% of the time I remembered to confirm loads, my fiance even less. Both my fiance and I receive angry messages on our work tablets stating that going forward, if we do not confirm a load, it will be assumed that we are not able to work the load and it will be pulled from us and will be placed on standby, paid at 50% average day's load pay if we aren't called in. Well, over winter, most of the loads for this new store canceled because of it getting drowned in snow. Now my fiance is getting loads for it again. He got a notification that he was supposed to go to this new store on Sunday. Guess who forgot to confirm his load on Saturday? Sunday he wakes up, no load, and an angry message from the supervisor. Because of your failure to confirm your load, it's been taken off of you and given to someone else who actually wants to work. You're on standby. Fiance rejoices. Tuesday, he's once more given the new store and forgets to confirm his load and wakes up to no load and an angry message that says basically the same and concludes with, "Call me." So my fiance calls the supervisor, and the supervisor wants to know why it's so hard to confirm loads. My fiance just kind of dismisses it with a shrug and ends the call. We found out Friday after talking to some other drivers that all previously home daily drivers are now doing the same thing. Get a store they don't like? Mostly these two new stores. Just don't confirm. If we have to confirm to get to do the store, we just won't confirm. Am I the jerk for telling my stepsister I'm not surprised her kid doesn't get invited to parties? My stepsister Micah and I have daughters a year apart. Micah's daughter, Gemma, is 9, and my daughter, Serena, is 8. Gemma has had behavioral issues since I can remember. When she was younger, she had constant tantrums, couldn't sit still, and would vandalize anything she could get her hands on. As she got older, her lack of manners and destructive behavior made her nearly impossible to be around, and besides that, she was really mean. She told my daughter that her modeling campaign photos were ugly and calls people stupid constantly, teased my mother's dogs to the point she isn't allowed near them anymore. She's just not nice. The other day, me and Micah were at our parents' house, and my stepdad mentioned Serena's birthday and that she was having a small party, 4 girls from her class, for a shopping and spa experience and sleepover. Micah asked me if I was planning to invite Gemma. Previous years, Serena had large parties, so we invited Gemma as a courtesy. I said no, because Serena is having a small party for her friends this year, and since the girls are not close, I was not going to force her to invite Gemma. Micah said I was teaching Serena to exclude people, to which I said that not being friends with someone isn't excluding them. This conversation went back and forth for nearly 10 minutes, and I was getting fed up of trying to be diplomatic because I know for a fact that Micah is aware of what Gemma is like. She complains often, so I didn't see why we were skirting around the obvious. Then Micah said that I should show some compassion since Serena's party might be the only party or play date Gemma is invited to this year. I just said I wasn't surprised. Micah asked what I meant by that, and I said that Gemma is not kind to the people around her and lacks social skills, and she's at an age where kids will notice that and not be forgiving. Micah seemed taken aback and said that she can't believe I would be so cruel about her. She got her things and left, and is apparently not speaking to her dad because he didn't stand up for her over what I said. She has also said she won't be coming to any upcoming family events. My stepdad said I was right, and that while he finds it hard to be honest about Gemma, it's good that I was. My mother said that while I was right, as a mother, it's not an easy thing to hear about your kid. My husband says that I should have stuck to saying no to Gemma coming to the party and left it there because she isn't our concern beyond that, and I should stay in my lane. I'm kind of questioning it now because I am someone who generally does try to stay in my lane and not get involved in other people's parenting or family business. But the comment was topical to what Micah was trying to force me to do, so I'm not sure if I was out of my bounds to say it. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Micah pushed for answers and she got them. I'm sure she was just hoping her pushiness led to an invite. So it's a mess around and find out situation. Is it hard to hear that your kid's behavior is unpleasant? Absolutely. Could this be a catalyst for Micah to step up her parenting game? I hope so, for her kid's sake. Empathy is hard to teach, but behavioral consequences should definitely be present. I'm going with not the jerk. I'm sure she knows that Gemma is a difficult kid and has social skill issues, but there seems to come a point in which parents will start ignoring it and treating their kid like they're exactly like everyone else, purely for their own convenience. It's not cruel at all to point out that a kid struggles socially to their parents. It would be cruel if you crouched down to Gemma and told her she was a horrible kid that's going to get bullied for being so rude. Even then, not inviting someone to a birthday party is not exclusion. If Gemma truly will ruin the experience at the party for your daughter and the others, it makes perfect sense not to invite her. Am I the jerk for leaving my sister in another country? For context, me, 28 female, and my sister, 33 female, planned a trip from the US to Portugal. I booked the Airbnb and hotel. My sister asked if she could pay later. I was fine with this. But a week before the trip is when problems start to occur. She still hadn't paid me. She owed me about $1,000. I mentioned it a few times and she sends me half. She says she'll give me the other half cash as she's a bartender. Well, we go on the trip and suddenly she claims she forgot all of her cards and essentially has no money, leaving me to pay for both of us to do anything. I don't want to ruin my trip, so I agree, and I believe she'll eventually pay me back. Now she's my older sister and I'm the youngest. I'm sort of used to my sibling bossing me around, but this trip, she was being absolutely terrible to me. I've literally never felt so put down in my life. If we got lost, it was my fault. She was constantly yelling at me. She said she doesn't pump gas, so I had to pump the gas every time. One of the places we rented only had one bed. I had to sleep on the couch. It honestly was the worst trip I've ever been on. I put up with it as I thought arguing would only make it worse. Well, fast forward to the day we're supposed to leave and travel to Amsterdam. She hasn't packed, so I try to wake up early so she'd have time and we can make it to the airport. She just goes crazy on me, saying she knows when she needs to wake up and to leave her alone, then goes back to sleep. Well, I decide that's it, and I get an Uber and leave. I also turn off my phone. Well, not only does she miss the flight, but she had no money to leave. She ends up having to call my parents, and they have to help. Well, now my whole family is saying how horrible I am for how I left her in such a dangerous situation. I thought I was finally standing up for myself, but now everyone is upset with me, and my sister won't even speak to me. It's really getting to me, so I want outside opinions. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. I'm sorry your sister is a jerk. You cannot trust her again. My boss expects me to work overtime because I don't have kids. I, 18 female, started a new job a bit ago. For the most part, I really enjoy it. It's just difficult as I need time off about once a month for doctor's appointments that I absolutely can't miss. Recently, my manager has started keeping my department 2 hours later than usual to help with extra work. At first, this was okay. I didn't mind the extra money, but it started happening every day to the point where all I did was basically work, shower, and go to bed. I didn't have time for anything else. Yesterday, I went to my manager and told her I'm happy to help with extra work sometimes, but I won't be staying every day. It's overtime, which I cannot legally be forced to do. She said this was okay, and I thought that was that. Today, she came to me and told me that she needed me to stay anyway, as there were people with families who needed to go home. I told her I also have a family I want to go home and see, and she told me she only meant people with kids. I told her I'm sorry, but I won't be staying later every day, and parents don't have some rightful claim to leave that I don't, just because they have kids. She told me that legally there was nothing she could do to force me, but that it would be extremely selfish of me to force these people to miss out on time with their kids and potentially pay more for babysitters and such. I told her again that I'm sorry, but that's not my problem, and I also have a life outside of work that I want to live, as does everyone else. Mine just doesn't involve kids. She left it at that, but I've definitely been getting side-eyed by people who I know have kids, as I have overheard conversations on our line. Ultimately, I don't care. I'll still be staying to help about half the time, but I do need time for myself as well. Am I the jerk? Edit. I live in the United States. We don't have labor laws that benefit the worker over the corporation. Also, the time I need off for my monthly appointment is usually the last 2 or 3 hours of the day the appointment is on. I'm never taking a full day or multiple days off for them. Karen destroys a family heirloom. Huge mistake. I, female 26, have 2 cousins who are 33 and 28. My oldest cousin, Jane, is married. My other cousin, Amy, just got married. I'm single. Right before she got engaged last summer, our grandma gave Amy's fiance, John, a diamond ring to propose with. This ring is a gorgeous white gold and diamond ring that our grandpa gave her. He passed when our dads were teens. My grandma has since remarried and always said that she'd pass on the ring. I won't lie, I've always loved that ring and hoped it would be mine one day, but I'm also the youngest cousin, so I tried to temper my expectations. Mostly I was happy for Amy and glad that the ring was staying in the family, and Jane agreed. Fast forward to this weekend, which was Amy's wedding. Neither Jane nor I were in the wedding, but we both went to the hotel room where Amy was getting ready. She asked if we wanted to see the rings. We were both confused, but said sure, and what she showed us was a gargantuan, tacky engagement ring and wedding band set. I sputtered something like, "But I thought you were getting married with Grandma's ring." Amy just smiled and said, "Yeah, it is Grandma's ring." She explained that for her wedding gift, she asked John to upgrade the ring into this monstrosity since he didn't have to pay for an engagement ring in the first place. One of the diamonds was Grandma's, and then the white gold melted down to make one of her wedding bands, but the rest was all new stuff. I burst into tears. I was so shocked and hurt. I told her she destroyed our grandparents' heirloom. If she wanted a giant diamond to wear every day, that's her choice, but the ring was important to our family. Amy got huffy and said she had to finish getting ready, so Jane and I left. Jane was also upset, but had the attitude of, "It's Amy's ring, nothing we can do now." I told her I didn't think Grandma would have given it to John and Amy if she knew that she was going to take it apart. I found Grandma and asked her if she knew what Amy had done. Amy's mom had told her that Amy had to have it resized and have the setting fixed, but Grandma had no idea that it was made into an entirely new ring. She didn't say anything, but I could tell she was upset. The wedding went on, but everyone could tell there was some awkwardness between me and Amy, and Jane and Grandma are refusing to talk about the matter. Amy is saying I owe her an apology, but I don't think I'm in the wrong for saying she destroyed a family heirloom. Plus, the fact that she didn't tell anyone what she was doing and misled Grandma says to me that she knew she was in the wrong, or at least it wouldn't have been condoned. I feel like she saw it as not an heirloom, but a way to subsidize what she really wanted. I know the mature thing to do is to just get over it and accept that it was given to Amy and she made her choice, but I'm finding it really hard to get over what she did. Am I the jerk for feeling the way I do? Not the jerk. What kind of jerk takes apart a family heirloom? You can't be blamed for having an emotional reaction, and she's so trashy for what she did. The deed is done and it was given to her. However, if she just wanted the diamond, she should have, ideally, kept the setting to pass on to others, or even use it for a different stone. Perhaps ask Grandma if she has pics of the original setting so you can have it remade as an homage to your grandparents. You're the jerk. You put a blemish on her wedding because you're jealous. She was gifted the ring and used it to create one more to her style. It can still be just as sentimental to her and still be her grandmother's ring. Not to mention, you go on about an heirloom ring as if it's been handed down through multiple generations. It's not an heirloom. It was your grandmother's ring. You're the jerk. Did you really have to tell her this on her wedding day? And did you really have to tell your grandma on the wedding day? You couldn't just smile and pretend to be happy for her. You could have told her a week or a month later. It's not like it was magically going to change back when you started crying over it. You should have just let her be happy with it, at least for that one day. Another new manager facing the consequences of their actions. I'll keep the details as vague as possible because I'm still with this organization. I work for a government department. We have offices and locations all over the state. I'm based out of a city that's about a 2-hour train ride to our head office. At the time, I was working on a team that had members working remotely all across the state, looking after policy, process, and quality assurance. Our old manager had gone and gotten himself promoted for being genuinely brilliant at his role. So our new manager, Steve, was hired in from the glorious world of banking, and he was here to whip us lazy public servants into shape. A few days after he began his role, he called us all to a teleconference to inform us that he wanted all of us to be at the head office at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning for an all-day in-person team meeting. He wanted to see us in meat space to size us up, understand what we were doing, and see where we weren't keeping up with the private sector. As I mentioned, due to the nature of the work we were doing, we were all across the state. So in person, whole team meetings were rare, and if they occurred at all, they were booked weeks in advance. We were all adept at video conferencing long before lockdown. Some of us tried to tell our new high-flyer manager that almost none of us were in the same city as him, and to be there on such short notice would mean travel expenses, meal allowances, overtime, etc. He didn't seem to care and told us in no uncertain terms to just be at the office tomorrow at 8 before abruptly hanging up. Now I should explain something. I'm one of a handful of union delegates in our department. I know our award back to front, specifically the sections dealing with travel, allowances, and overtime. So I engaged malicious compliance mode. If Steve wanted us there, fine, but it'll cost him. So I quickly went about emailing my team what Steve had done by requiring us to be in the head office at 8 a.m. and what to do. Because we'd have to travel outside our normal work hours, our workday clock started ticking the moment we left our homes and only stopped once we got home. Some of our team traveled overnight. They were entitled to overtime to travel, a dinner allowance, an accommodation for the night, and the same returning. As someone traveling in the morning before 7 a.m., I was entitled to a breakfast allowance, lunch allowance, and if I got home after 9 p.m., a dinner allowance also. So I left my house at 5 a.m. to catch the only train that would get me there in time. The train was running slightly behind, but I made it in time. So my first 3 hours of my workday down, and I'd done no work. After a brief period of us introducing ourselves to Steve, he proceeded to spend the next 4 hours telling us about all of the things he did at the bank, how he made so much money for them, where they had sent him as a holiday bonus, how we're all stuck in the past in the public service, the work he had seen wasn't up to private sector standards, etc. He had all the assuredness of a finance bro who had always failed upwards because others had picked up his slack. By 3 p.m., my entire team were into overtime pay territory, and Steve was just warming up with his non-charm offensive. Another 3 hours go by with Steve verbally patting himself on his back, deeply in love hearing his own voice, but all I hear is cha-ching. Steve decided that 5 p.m. was a good time to finish up. He stopped mid-sentence, looked at his watch, and unceremoniously said, "That's all for today. Go home now," and walked out. After I and a few others gave a few awkward shrugs to each other, we all packed up and started to make our separate ways home after doing no work all day. I myself got to the train station pretty quickly and saw a train was leaving soon that would get me home around 8 p.m. Or I could catch the all stations train and get home closer to 9:30 p.m. You know what? No matter how fast I could run, I just couldn't catch that earlier train. Darn, I'd just have to catch that all stations train and be on the clock for another hour and a half, plus have my dinner paid for. Such rotten luck. I submitted my claims the next day, 4.5 hours at double rate, my train tickets, my taxi fares to and from the train station, my breakfast, lunch, and dinner allowances. For me alone, it was close to $500 expense claim. The rest of my team followed suit and ensured that they claimed everything too. Steve tried to fight us on approval for the claims, but quickly learned that unlike in the world of banking, most public servants are union, and we'd raise heck if he tried to deny our award-guaranteed allowances. His all-day Steve Fest symposium blew a good $6,000 hole in his budget. Needless to say, while Steve was our manager, he never required us to attend an in-person meeting again. Video conferencing was just fine. He only lasted 6 months before leaving for new opportunities. He just went back to his old job at the bank. Guess he was the one who couldn't keep up. Am I the jerk for telling my daughter the truth about her father? I got pregnant in college when I was 19. Her father was in the same position. Prior to doing the deed, I told him if anything were to happen, I would be keeping the baby. He said he understood. When I got pregnant, he refused any contact with my baby or responsibility. He took things further by telling my friends and his family that I planned the pregnancy to trap him so they wouldn't judge his actions. This was not true. He paid mandatory child support, but it wasn't much. It was hard, but I love my daughter and I wouldn't change a thing. She's wonderful and smart, and she's my whole world. He reached out to me on Facebook saying he wants to be in his daughter's life. He's married now. I did some searching online. His wife has frequently posted about her infertility struggle. I was against it because he's had no part of her life. It was me who had to drop out of college, work 2 jobs, endure the sleepless nights as a baby and raise her. It was me that kept her belly full and kept her warm. He didn't give a hoot. It was me that endured my friends turned against me and his family's harassment and the judgment of society for being a young mom. And now that he wouldn't be sacrificing his young years, now he's finished partying, now he's got his degree and job, and his wife can't give him kids to complete his picket fence life, he wants the kid I raised for him? Knowing he doesn't really have to do any work other than to pick her up now and then? I told him my thoughts, and he got mad, saying that I chose to have the baby, not him, which tipped things over for me. I asked him to prove he thought about her. Example, a college fund he's paid into for a while with her in mind, or car money. He did not, which again proved to me he only gave a hoot when he couldn't make more kids. I spoke to my daughter, but I told her the type of person her father is. I told her he has nothing for her, and I was honest about the fact his wife is infertile, so that's why he's reaching out. I told her everything and reiterated basically everything I said in the past. I told her to think about it. I said I'd support her knowing him, but I affirmed he is not a nice person and his intentions are not where we would want. She chose to not know him. After I informed him, he got mad. He said I ruined his chance to know her, that I'm denying her a father. I told him he was the one that did that. My mother told me I shouldn't have poisoned his image to her, that she probably feels rejected all over again, and she's probably hurting. I now feel like I have done wrong by her. Am I the jerk? Edit. She's 16 now. Edit 2. If it wasn't for the infertile wife and lack of college fund or car money, showing evidence he had at least thought about her, then I probably wouldn't have said anything to her about what he's like. But to me, those were red flags. Not the jerk. You are protecting your daughter from a potentially harmful situation. It's one thing for him to give up parental rights and for it to remain that way, but what he's doing is treating her like she's some sort of a trend of the month. What's going to happen when he realizes she is a complex, multi-layered human with a lot of thoughts and feelings, and likely a lot of negative feelings towards him? I wouldn't trust him with properly taking care of an animal, let alone a kid. Couldn't have put it better myself. And to OP if she sees this. As a guy who was raised by a single mother and with a deadbeat father that we usually referred to as the donor, who was never around, keep up the good work. It's hard enough being a parent, let alone in that kind of situation. I would say one thing though. Try not to let your feelings about him cloud your judgment too much. I never knew my donor. I only ever had what my mom told me, and she never hid the fact that she didn't want me to have anything to do with him. I didn't get the chance to form my own opinion of the man, and for all I know, he was mildly decent. And there is a small part of me that wishes I could have met him before he passed, if only to see for myself who he was. And that part of me will never forgive my mom for denying me that. Your daughter may never get to that point, but for her sake, and the sake of your relationship with her, don't stand in the way if she changes her mind and wants to get to know him. Yes, he may break her heart, but at least she can find out for herself. Part of me wants to say everyone sucks here, because you did poison her views of him. But who could blame you for that? He didn't give a darn for 16 years, and what he did when you were pregnant is indefensible. You didn't deny her a father, he did. He's nothing but a donor and a stranger to her. Maybe someday she will want to know him as an adult, but I can't imagine he will ever be her dad. You're not the jerk. You're the jerk, but hear me out, because you need someone to tell you this. My parents divorced 26 years ago, and my egg donor would speak about him as if he was the same man from when they were married. She would speak to his character, tastes, interests, etc., that he was a bad man. She would speak of him as if he was frozen in time, as if while she changed over the years, he had stayed the same. My father, in no way, shape, or form, the man my mother holds on to in her memories. He stopped being that man within 5 years. He's the kindest, most generous, caring person I've ever known. It's been 16 years since you've known this man. He's not the man you knew, full stop. Your mother is correct. You did poison her against him. You weren't wrong to convey your experience with him, but you were wrong to decide that he is anything past that experience because the actual fact of the matter is you don't even know him. Even if you are right in the end, that should be for your daughter to discover. This wasn't an act to protect your daughter, this was an act to make him pay. And if you disagree, then you really aren't objectively looking at the facts you provided. His wife is infertile. This is catastrophically damaging to a couple who wants kids, not just the would-be mother. That's an entire emotional journey to process. You also assume he wants nothing to do with his daughter. It could be that his wife has deep insecurities about it because of her infertility. The fact is, you factually have no clue about this man, but have decided he's evil based off of your lived experience from 16 years ago. The whole post is me, and how you're the victim. It's not even about your daughter. Am I the jerk for refusing to take my girlfriend to nice places because of how she eats? My girlfriend is an incredibly picky eater. Like I said in the title, she eats like she's 10 years old. In fact, I'll give you a short list of the things she refuses to eat. Unflavored water, fish, excluding fried shrimp, anything with bones, cheese other than sharp cheddar, spinach, onions, garlic, pasta without red sauce, eggs, spicy food, ketchup, potatoes, besides French fries, pastries with fruit, citrus, sausage, or any non-American food. This compares to me, someone who grew up in multiple different regions of the US and lived abroad for a few years, so I'm a bit more adventurous when it comes to food. Whenever me and my girlfriend go out somewhere nice, she ends up getting the same meals, usually either a burger or chicken tenders and fries. We could be going to an authentic Nepalese restaurant, and she will get the French fries with white rice. To me, it's kind of embarrassing to go to a restaurant where there's a dress code and for her to order chicken tenders and fries. It especially bothers me since I typically pay. I end up paying $15 for chicken tenders that I could have got from the freezer section at Walmart for $5. Recently in our area, a very nice dinner place opened up, and my girlfriend has been dying to go. I took a look at the place and the menu, and I saw that it looked nice, but the food was kind of pricey. She said she was probably going to get chicken tenders as usual. I asked her what's the point of going then if I can toss some chicken tenders in the air fryer for her and not spend a ridiculous amount of money on it. She asked why I had an attitude about this, and I told her that I thought it was a waste of time and money to go to a place to get little kid food. She interrupted this as me calling her a little kid. I clarified that I wasn't calling her a kid, however, it is kind of childish for her to eat the way she does. I also said that if she's going to order food we can make at home, there's no point in us going anywhere. This led to an argument about me thinking I'm better than her. Am I the jerk? You're the jerk. Going out to eat at a nice restaurant isn't just about the food, it's also about the atmosphere and having fun together. Unfortunately, it sounds like you're so caught up trying not to be embarrassed by her that you can't even have fun. I doubt the waiters even give a second thought. You're the only one ruining the party. You're the jerk. Your post reeks of superiority, regardless of how you mean it. You aren't better than her just because you enjoy a wider variety of food. You're the jerk. She should be able to eat whatever she wants. So what if she wants chicken tenders from a nice restaurant? I bet those are nice tasting tenders. I order a lot of the same foods at places because to me, it's a way of not wasting money since I know what I like. Lots of cool stuff on the menu, but what if I hated and wasted $20? You say you typically pay, so don't. Have an actual conversation without talking down to her about how you don't like spending that much money on stuff you can make at home, or just switch off and she pays one meal, then you pay the next or whatever. I don't know, man. You seem really judgmental of her, but she's not an adventurous eater, and there's nothing wrong with that. Edit. Also, if her food choices bug you so much, you could ask her to try things she's not had before and are not sure if she likes by making them at home or buying frozen meals, so you spend less and you can eat it and save the leftovers for yourself if she doesn't like it. But honestly, it seems like a you problem. People's taste buds tend to change over time, and it seems like such a weird thing to get caught up on, man. Something tells me most of the people on Reddit probably have diets that consist primarily of tendies and fries. And juice pouches. Don't forget the juice pouches. Former manager made my life horrible, and I finally got her fired. I was desperate to join a new job after my husband and I were both laid off last year. When I was offered a new role, I knew it would be a step down from what I was doing, but the manager and the team seemed great, and that part has not changed. However, since my manager, Gary, was so busy, he basically offloaded me to another manager, Jane. I was supposed to be the connection point between my team and Jane, but it quickly became Jane micromanaging me. She would ask me to work through lunch, move or cancel my vacation days, call at 11 p.m. on weekends, and order me around on phone calls. She also made mean comments about my weight. The list of personal slights so long that it filled 3 pages. I would talk back to her and she did not like that, and that provoked her even more. I only stayed because we needed to pay the bills. Finally, I had a mental breakdown on a Friday afternoon after she yelled at me for something trivial about scheduling a meeting without including someone from her team who I didn't know about. I was dealing with a family issue and couldn't take it anymore. I told Gary about the situation with Jane, and he was sympathetic and not at all surprised considering half her team quit. He immediately offered to move me to a different team under him. I was thrilled. Well, turns out going to the new team didn't help. Jane continued to order me around from afar. When I ignored her emails, she came to my desk one day and started loudly talking about how I'm not qualified for this role. Gary overheard and finally told her off, but the verbal mistreatment did not stop. After 2 months there, I abruptly wrote my resignation letter and stapled a list of Jane's offensive comments and CC'd everyone. Gary offered a bunch of accommodations to try to keep me, but seeing how she was still provoking from afar, I said the only way for me to stay would be for her to go, and he did not have the authority to let her go. Her manager was in a different country, and despite several HR complaints from at least 5 people, nothing was done. So I left, loudly and without shame, telling everyone exactly why I was leaving. Times were very bad for 3 months. There were nights we would eat slices of bread just so we could pay the mortgage and emergency expenses from a health crisis and a funeral. Even after he found a job, we were still catching up on bills and still are. I spent months applying to 5 to 10 roles per day, sometimes over 20. Last month, I saw a public memo about a big shot from a former company joining the company I just left. I used to work with this guy closely and texted him a, "Congrats, let me know if you need any insights on the new place." We had a quick call where I told him some ins and outs, where I thought they could innovate. After this call, he asked me to join the team as his chief on staff. I accepted. Imagine Jane's shock when we had our first all-hands-on call. All the VPs and above were asked to welcome the new big shot in a giant conference room. In Big Shot's speech, he breezed over that I'll be his chief of staff, along with a few key names. I now sat 2 levels above Jane, and apparently, within the 3 months I was not there, the other half of her team turned over. Every single person had left. Gary was excited for me and said all nice things. However, Jane took the classless route and sent Big Shot an email about how I'm an unqualified idiot that used to work for her, how I tried to get her fired, and that she suspects I lied to get ahead. She didn't even try to be fake nice. Big Shot forwarded me her email and asked what this was about. I was so nervous and excited. Little did Jane know I was a director at Big Shot's competitor company and was already a level above her. So 2 levels isn't a big leap, and I worked with him for 5 years. I had an hour call with Big Shot and told him she was bad for the company culture and was a nasty person in general. But the evidence he needed was Gary confirming that her whole team had turned over. My prior resignation letter, which was still sitting on my desktop when I logged in upon return, and a few other nasty emails she sent her recent staff, which they were happy to share with us. Big Shot fired Jane on Friday. Am I the jerk for not wanting to have my wife's friends spend the night? My wife, 32 female, and I, 37 male, are friends with another married couple that's much younger than us, by about 10 to 15 years. I'm not a fan of either of them, but we both have kids, and my wife has become close with the other wife. The husband is on his phone 24/7, and we don't seem to have much in common, but I do my best to put on a friendly face because I think it's important for my kid to have time around other toddlers. Every time they come to our house, it seems to turn into an all-day visit. I'm talking like 6 to 8 hours. I eventually get worn down by the other wife. She annoys me. She never stops talking, and she constantly just says incredibly stupid things. I stay out of most of the conversation because I'm afraid that if I do join in, I won't be able to refrain from being very blunt. Yesterday, as the kids were outside in our inflatable pool on the front lawn, I'm not really listening to the conversation, but my wife taps me and asks, "What do you think about having them stay over some night in the future?" I said sure, but made a mental note to talk to my wife later about it. These people have their own home. Why would they sleep at mine unless they had too much to drink? We weren't drinking. Around an hour later, I realized through the conversation they're having that a decision has been made for them to stay over tonight. It immediately made my blood boil that my wife made this decision knowing that I don't like this couple. It's been discussed, and without really even asking me about it, just asking me about a future slumber party. For the next 3 to 4 hours, I was near everyone, but was not really a part of any conversation. I was upset. I took my baby upstairs around 7:30 p.m. to try and get her to sleep because it was too loud downstairs. My wife came up and I immediately fired off on her. I told her that she was a jerk for inviting 2 adults I can't stand to sleep over at my house, and without discussing it with me first. We argued a little and she went back downstairs. After getting the baby to sleep, I walked downstairs and noticed they were packing up their stuff. No one said a word to me, and it was maybe the most awkward 30 seconds of my life. There was tension in the room. After they left, my wife told me that she had come downstairs and told them that I did not want them to stay the night. My wife and I argued after they left. She thinks she did nothing wrong, and I can't believe she made me look like such a jerk, and how awkward it will be when I have to see these people again. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. These people sound weird, and your wife is weird for liking them. Would I be the jerk for not taking in my brother's kid? I, 32 female, have 2 daughters who are 6 and 3. Both my husband and I have very lucrative degrees, so we've been able to cut down hours to focus on being a family and still make a good living. I love being a mother, and I've always dreamt of being one. I put a lot of effort into being the best mother I can. People tend to compliment me on aspects of my parenting or how independent and responsible my 6-year-old is. I also got a younger brother who's 20, male. He got a girl pregnant about 8 months ago. He convinced her to keep the baby, and as she didn't want to raise it, he made her sign away parental rights and promised to take care of the kid. My whole family congratulated him on making the right choice. I advised him to rethink, but it's his choice in the end. A couple of weeks ago at a family function, we were planning on trying for our 3rd kid soon, and we will probably stop there as we only want 3 kids. My brother later called me and asked me to talk about something and if he could drop by my house because he wanted to discuss it. I agreed. Today he showed up with my parents, and between the 3 of them told me they got this great idea about how I should take my brother's kid. They explained it as if they were doing me a favor because they knew I wanted a 3rd kid and I could just take him in without going through a 3rd pregnancy. They also explained how my brother wanted to finish his degree and couldn't do that while raising a kid, so this was the best alternative for both of us. I told them I didn't know and that I needed more time to think about it, but that I didn't feel comfortable in the position I was being put in because raising a kid is not something to be taken lightly. They were disappointed in my answer, and after they left, the 3 of them separately sent me a wall of text telling me to make the right choice and not deny love to a kid just because I'm being selfish. I don't feel comfortable raising my brother's kid, but I can't explain a non-selfish reason why I don't want to. I like having biological kids. I feel one of our kids being actually my brother's kid would add such a complex family dynamic. I don't feel ready to face that, and somehow I just don't feel it's fair. It's so easy to get all the pats on the back for saving a kid when you are not going to be the one to take responsibility in the end. I'm helping perpetuate a family dynamic I feel has been going on for ages. When I told my husband, he told me that they're absolutely mental and should respect my reasons for not wanting to do something like this. But I still feel guilty because I am capable of taking care of the kid, and if I don't step up, I don't know what the fate of that kid will be. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Your brother talked this girl into keeping the baby because, what, he was expecting his family to take care of it? No. It would be wise to sit down and explain to him that you are not going to raise a kid he and your parents decided was better off with one parent, as that was the road they were going down before they knew you wanted a 3rd kid. You want to send me home? Sounds good. So I was a sarcastic and easily annoyed guy in my 20s, and this often didn't help me get along with older or corporate types. I was working at a certain pumpkin-colored big box home improvement store one spring in the flooring department. It was just starting to get warm out, and the store didn't have much AC, so I was looking forward to a magical date where certain employees were allowed to switch their pants for shorts. Problem is that we had a new department manager, I'll call him Jerk, who was aggressively chasing a promotion to assistant manager, then store manager. He thought he could accomplish that by being a super by-the-book jerk and being relentlessly metrics-focused. This translated into a manager who was a know-it-all micromanaging jerk. Anyway, I'm scheduled to open at 5 a.m. one day on the fabled day of cooler bottom wear, and I walk in all light and airy and bare-legged. Jerk, who was overnight manager the previous night, saw me and threw a fit. "Why are you out of uniform?" he asked. "I'm not. I can wear shorts starting today," I proclaimed. "Not your position in your department. Who told you you could?" he retorted. "The employee handbook and SOP. I can show you if you don't believe me," I offered. "I know the SOP, and your department doesn't get to wear shorts. That's only garden. Go home and change right now," he demanded, face getting redder from my defiance. "Okay, Jerk, if that's how you want to play it, I'll be back in an hour," I sighed. Maybe the loss of an hour of pay will teach you something. So I know better. The reason I know better is because I'm one of the weirdos who actually read the entire Standard Operating Procedure document, the Employee Handbook, which is actually just a subsection of the SOP, and I really hate being wrong. So I check the SOP before doing anything different day to day. In my store, the SOP was like invoking God. If the SOP said so, that won every single argument. So I go home, change into pants, but bring my shorts back to work with me. By now, jerk shift is over, and I ask the new morning manager on duty, Darren, to meet with me. Why? What's up? Oh, just an SOP issue. Oh, okay. Give me like 10 minutes. So I swung by my desk and printed out several things. 1. My latest pay stub that included my official job title and department number. The company directory that listed the department names and their associated numbers. The SOP that dealt with when and which department's employees can wear shorts. The annual email from the regional VP confirming which departments could wear shorts. The SOP detailing the company transportation and mileage reimbursement policy, and a Google Maps route that mirrored the route I take to and from work, the total mileage highlighted. So I meet with Darren and explained what happened and handed him each page as they became relevant. At the end, we agreed that I was right on every single account, and he asked me what I wanted. 1. I want the time. I was turned away before I could clock in, so I want to be paid starting at 5 a.m. Feel free to check the cameras if you need to confirm when I arrived. 2. I want the mileage, because Jerk sent me on essentially a company errand with my own car. 3. I want this letter posted at the clock, like it says it's supposed to be. 4. I want you to talk to Jerk about this, because I told him this was SOP before he sent me home. And 5. I'm changing back into my shorts. All of that sounds more than fair. Get the paperwork for the clock adjustment and mileage to me today, and I'll sign it. The letter mysteriously went missing from the time clock the next day, but I replaced it every day until I happened to see Jerk angrily snatch it off the board and throw it away. I reported that as well, and the letter stopped going missing. He didn't talk to me much, and I was transferred to another department a month later. So all in all, win-win, I think. Karen demands I cook on Easter. I, 30 female, am married to my husband Mike, who's 32. Mike usually does all of the cooking, and it works for us. Sometimes I cook as well, but it's very few and far between. Mike's family likes to have potlucks where the women all bring different dishes. I am a good cook, but I don't enjoy it, so we've always just said that I can't cook. We've been married for 3 years, and this hasn't been an issue. Mike and I have a daughter who's 5. She mentioned to my sister-in-law how mommy makes the best seafood casserole while trying my sister-in-law's. My sister-in-law mentioned something about the comment to my husband, and he explained how I just don't enjoy cooking, so I don't do it often and don't want to cook for family parties. My sister-in-law told my mother-in-law, and all the women in Mike's family have been texting me saying I'm selfish for letting them do all of the work at family parties. So I said I don't enjoy cooking and will not be cooking for any family parties. We all went back and forth a few times, so I said the next family party, Easter this weekend, my daughter and I will not be attending then. My mother-in-law said I'm the jerk for not allowing my daughter to attend, saying it's manipulative and that I should just make the dish and suck it up like everyone else. My husband said he's staying out of it right now, but that he understands my position. He said maybe just make a dish one time to have peace on Easter, and I refused. So, am I the jerk for pretending I couldn't cook for all of these years, and for not allowing my daughter to attend Easter? Edits for clarification. 1. My daughter will still spend Easter with my family, just not my husband's. 2. He can't take her alone because he's on call for work that weekend. 3. We did try buying store-bought once, and it was never served on purpose. 4. Mike doesn't cook for these events because it's time-consuming making a dish large enough, and he works a lot. Making a meal for our family doesn't take nearly as much time since there's only 2 adults and 1 kid. Update. Mike and I have talked about this weekend. He reached out to his mom and let her know we will not be attending if I have to cook anything. I don't know what happened during their conversation that made him so upset, but his mom has since retracted her statement and said it's fine, they just want to see their grandchild. Mike let them know that since this was the hill they wanted to die on, that he will also not be attending Easter and that we will not be attending as a family unless the women in his family apologize for attacking me. We will be spending the full day of Easter with my family, which my daughter is happy to spend the day with her cousins. Mike said we will not be attending another of his family's parties unless I'm 100% comfortable, and if any comments or remarks are made, we will be leaving and not returning. Why can't your husband make a dish to bring to these potlucks? One dish per family isn't unusual for a potluck. Why can't your husband just make and bring something? Is there some curse placed upon his family that food made not from the hands of a bewombed person upon the holy day of Easter is not allowed or something? Not the jerk. They have no right to demand you cook anything. My husband's family tried to pull the same crap on me, but I made it clear early on that I wouldn't have it. Do I know how to cook? Sure, but we still do Grubhub and Uber Eats most nights a week because I hate cooking. Honestly, I don't blame you for not attending or letting your daughter attend. If he wants to attend this crap, tell him to go ahead, but you won't be there for it or allow your daughter to be there either. My landlord asked me to take care of his kids. I, 25 female, live in a large city and stay in a family's basement for over $1,300 a month. They've been nice, but we don't really talk at all, which is fine with me. I moved in around February, and I mostly keep to myself and just go to work. My landlord, 50s male, told me they would be leaving to go out of the country because his parent was in a critical condition. He took his entire family with him, which is his wife and kids. They asked me to look out for packages and stuff while they're gone, which is not a big deal, so I said okay and to have a safe flight, etc. A week later, today, he texts me and says his kids would be coming back, but not him about a week from now. He asked me to take his kids to school until he gets back. I don't know when exactly that is. The reason I think I might be the jerk is because I think it's an insane request to ask a tenant that just lives here, and I don't know if they have any other family here. But I also know we live in a high cost of living area, and this house is probably worth more than I could ever afford, so I don't see why it's my responsibility to take care of my landlord's kids. He could probably pay for a rideshare service or something else. For reference, the kids are at least 17, I believe. My mom says I'm a jerk for not being helpful and that it's selfish. I have a job that I can work from home and maybe have time to take them. I start about an hour after I would take them to school. I haven't called him about it yet because I feel bad, but like I said, I have a full-time job and live in a big city. If I want to go into the office or am required to go for anything, I had already made plans to go into the office next week for something I have to do, for example. I don't have time to take them because it takes over an hour to get there. I genuinely think it's an insane thing to ask a random tenant to do without consideration of my job or my life. He just said, "I won't be coming back, and I need you to take my kids to school for an undisclosed amount of time." Granted, I have not called him yet to hear more, and the circumstances are out of his control, so I don't know if I'm the jerk and I should just take his kids to school. Not the jerk. Totally weird, and I wonder if he'd have made this ridiculous request if you were 25 male. I would just say no. But if you are inclined to do this for him, don't do it for free. Calculate a daily rate for this service that you are happy with, then add a decent additional amount on for the last-minute nature of the request, and make him agree in writing that it will come off of your next month's rent before you lift a finger. Not the jerk. That's definitely a ridiculous request. You're not a house sitter or a nanny. You're paying them for housing. They are not paying you for childcare. Looking out for packages is one thing, but being responsible for someone's kids? That's a huge responsibility and not something a landlord should ask of a tenant at all, honestly, but especially without offering compensation. He should have called you to ask and offered compensation in return for you taking his kids to and from school. Sending a text basically just telling you that this is happening is super weird. It's tricky since you live there and you definitely don't want to get on the family's bad side, but you are 100% okay to refuse this request and to think it's a crazy thing to ask. Am I the jerk for screwing my fence panels in so they can't be lifted? I've lived in my house for almost 3 years. I live on a corner house next to the road, a back road. A lot of the kids in the neighborhood play ball games in that area. This doesn't bother me much, apart from when they kick it against my fence. One thing that does bug me is how often they would come to the door because their ball had gone over into my garden. I know this seems like such a small thing, but I'm talking about 5 or 6 times a day. I used to work from home, so I would just go get the ball and ask them to be more careful. However, I recently changed jobs, and now I work out of the house. My partner is still home throughout the day, but is hard of hearing and never hears the kids when they knock. She actually uses more sign language than anything, or reads lips, as she really can't hear well at all without her hearing aid, which she only really wears when she's leaving the house. Anyway, since I haven't been home to answer the door, I found out the kids have actually been lifting my fence panel and coming into my garden to get their balls. I hate this. It makes me feel like my space and privacy is violated. I also have 4 dogs who are using outside when the weather is nice. I have cameras, so I've caught them doing this, and I have evidence, but their parents don't even seem to care. So I decided to screw all of my fence panels in so they could no longer be lifted up. Now, every night I go home, I'm greeted with a bunch of angry kids telling me their ball is in my garden and they can't get it. I just ignore them and throw the ball over without speaking to them. Yesterday, when I got home, one of the kids' mothers was at my front door. When I got out of my car, she instantly started yelling and calling me a thief for not getting her son's ball. I told her I was at work, and she started yelling about how my partner could have sorted it out. I told her I'd go get the ball, so calm down, and she said I needed to fix my fence as it was broken and the kids couldn't get them on their own anymore. I told her it wasn't broken, and I had done this so that they couldn't get in. This made her very angry, and she started yelling. I told her I couldn't have them letting my dogs out, and also mentioned how they almost broke my fence once, and she threatened to call the police for theft the next time I don't get the ball immediately. So, am I the jerk for stopping them from getting into my garden? And could they actually call the police when I'm not even home to get the ball? Update. After reading through some of the responses, I decided to take action. I looked through my camera footage and found all of the times they had entered my garden or kicked their ball over in the last few months, and actually found one from January where they had actually come in and opened my rabbit cage up to find the rabbit. Luckily, my rabbit wasn't out there as it was winter. Following this, I went to the woman's house and met her husband. I explained what had happened, and although he wasn't yelling like his wife, he didn't seem to care. So I explained I had evidence of his son trespassing on my property, damaging my property, and evidence of potential theft, since he was opening my rabbit cage and pulling on my shed door. At first, he tried to laugh me off, but then I pulled up one of the videos on my phone and told him I was reporting this to the police. He stopped laughing and started apologizing, said he would speak to both his wife and his son and to please not involve the police. I politely thanked him and left. On my way home, I ran into one of the other parents and filled her in on what was going on. She immediately apologizes for her son's involvement. Her son had never entered my property, but he has helped lift the fence and kick the ball. She assured me he would be grounded and have his footballs taken away, and told me that if they ever do it again, I should pop the balls. I did call the non-emergency number and got it all logged and the videos sent, and the kind lady on the phone informed me if it ever happens again, I can call and press charges. I can actually press charges now, but she advised me to wait, as they will only get a warning, as this is the first time that it's been logged. This also means if they do call to complain about the theft, they will be informed of the logs against them rather than any action against me. I have also informed my insurance company, who assured me since it's logged with the police and I have screwed my fences in, that I'm in the clear, but they also recommend I get a no trespassing sign, so I will do that this weekend. Thank you so much for all of your help and advice. I admit I had absolutely no idea what to do about it or if I even had a stand legally, so thank you for all of the info that you provided. Not the jerk. You should laugh at the mom and tell her to go ahead and call the police. You will be very happy to have them stop by to explain the situation. If they come out and find that you're being accused of stealing when kids are throwing or kicking balls into your yard when you're not home and having to do without them for a few hours, they're going to be very upset with her for wasting their time. He went Pikachu wow face when I asked if he could read. I used to be a DSD vendor, which in the US is someone who goes to stores like supermarkets and stocks a very specific name brand of product from stock in the back, and then leaves to go to the next store, repeat. We're often employed directly by the name brand, not by the store itself, so I have loads of I don't work here lady stories, but a few of them are real special. Chances are, if you're someone stalking a name brand of snack cakes, chips, soda, beer, or whatever, you're actually looking at a DSD vendor. I was doing my usual thing stalking my brand and went to part of Walmart's racetrack, which is the main walkway in front of a department. A dude I would shortly discover was as dumb as a bag of hammers comes up to me, completely ignoring my hat with a logo, shirt with logo, cart with logo, not a store cart, literally a my brand cart, 30 odd boxes with the logo and armloads of logo product, and asks me where something that's not my brand is that's typically in the frozen section. Me. I think those are usually in the frozen section. Jerk. Which aisle are those on then? Me. Keep going down that way until you get to the freezer section and then look there. I pointed to the area of the store where the freezers are very obviously to anyone with half a brain. Jerk walks one aisle down. I don't see them. Me. The freezer section is about 7 aisles down. Keep going until you get to the freezer section. Jerk walks one more aisle down. Where? Me. Keep going a long way down. You'll see the freezers. Jerk moves one more aisle down. I can't see it. Keep going. Look for the freezers. Jerk then moves one more aisle down. Where? Exasperated with his incompetence, I set my logo stuff down and walk over to him, fully intending to say something to the effect of, "Can you not see the signs above the aisles?" But instead, what came out was a stumbling over slightly yelling, "Me, can you read?" It's now Jerk's turn to be exasperated, and he turns to me and looks at me completely incredulously with furrowed brow, mouth hanging open, in perfect Pikachu expression as if to say, "Did I hear you literally say that to me right now?" using facial expressions alone. I just turned back towards my cart and mumbled out, "I don't work for this store," and got back to my stuff. I really had actually fully intended to say something else after that, but just the question's silliness on its own gave me pause to laugh internally about what the next word should be. I didn't see where Jerk ran off to after that, and on my way out, I told a manager for the supermarket and how I accidentally asked him if he could read, and she said not to worry about it. And she said, "I literally want to say that same thing every single day. I'm glad at least someone did." And that if it ever came back around as feedback against me, she would shut it down. Good times. Not going to give me a meal benefit? I'll eat at the office then. Some backstory from a few years back. I was working on healthcare as an HTA nurse, which around here is a nurse which travels around the city area doing health assessments which don't require 112 calls, 911, which is reserved for emergency and paramedics whom handle those cases. My job was essentially picking up the jobs which do not require immediate response and trying to treat the patient either at home or, if not possible, give instructions where they can get treatment for whatever was the ailment at the time. It was a job to assist people so that they wouldn't come to the ER with small injuries or illnesses, which can be handled in the regular healthcare center next working day. Also, other part was to go around and treat patients which had, for example, IV treatments regularly and administer the fluid treatment, drugs, painkillers, ABs, etc. My issue was that I noticed that as we drove around large area from one patient to another, we had to stop for a lunch at some point, and that we had to pay for lunch from our own pocket, whatever it cost. This is common practice. For example, paramedics. They eat when they can, and usually at some gas station, or somewhere where they currently are and have time to eat. I usually read the contracts pretty carefully, which came from my previous career as an engineer, where I had to make foolproof contracts and avoid stepping on traps, and our healthcare union had negotiated that if your work requires X amount of traveling, you should be entitled for tax-free meal benefit. I wasn't completely sure about it, if that particular statement would apply for the job I was doing, but I decided to ask stupid questions about it and eventually forced my supervisor to contact the management to get a statement for the issue at hand. From the management, it went to the legal department, and they began to delve into it, and it lasted for weeks since they couldn't quite deny it outright, but they eventually came to a conclusion that it couldn't be applied to the job that I had. I was a little annoyed at this, but decided not to contest it any more than that. But another statement which union had negotiated for us was that if we have an office or a station and social space where you warm up your meal, microwave, coffee maker, etc., we're entitled to have lunch break of 30 minutes per day at the regular office where I leave every morning. Just a normal thing, which, if backed by law as well around here, lunch is holier than holy if one can say so. I mentioned earlier that our area was rather large, so if I was working on northern parts, for example, it could take 2 hours to drive there, spend 4 hours with patients around that area, and then drive back to the station, an 8-hour shift. So I agreed with the bosses that I drop the issue with the meal benefit and will eat at the office instead, and they agreed on this, and I got it in writing email that I could do that. So not every day, but a few times a week when I was assigned to some faraway area, I jumped into the car, drove there, did maybe one patient call, then I had to hurry up back so I can begin my lunch break, then eat for 30 minutes and drive back to another patient and drive back. That's an awful lot of driving and wasted time. Eventually, I was confronted about this, and I explained that because I can't afford to eat lunch every day, I just have to eat my own cooking at the office, and that as we don't have the meal benefit, I am practically forced to drive back and forth so that I can have my prescribed by law lunch break. They were dumbfounded at first, but they could not squirm out of it at all. Problem was that the common practice had been for God knows how long, that paramedics and such just went along and paid their own meals as they never knew better. They had always had the possibility to go back to the station to eat, and I'm quite sure that we all were entitled for that meal benefit, since it is prescribed by law and union agreements in a way, that if you can't eat in regular way at the office, you are entitled for the meal benefit instead. But no one had really contested it earlier. So they were dumbfounded and asked me not to do it in the future, but I responded to that if they're going to get the meal benefit running for the department or not. Because if they are not going to do it, I am entitled to eat at the station. The discussion went on a while longer on the subject, but eventually they caved in. They arranged the meal benefit for every nurse and paramedic on the department as they couldn't find a way out otherwise and couldn't have us driving back and forth and not performing our job. Am I the jerk for yelling at my husband after he put me on blast in front of his parents? So I, 39 female, just had spinal surgery. I have some pretty serious restrictions during recovery. The big ones are that I can't lift anything over 10 pounds and I can't bend over for the next month. My husband, he's in his 40s, male, his parents, who are around 70, came across country to help us take care of our kids, who are 4.5 and 10 months, while I'm healing. We don't have any friends or family nearby, and the in-laws are available. My mother-in-law can be really helpful, but she's also really spacey and dismissive of our household rules. Typically, I prefer to have a few days with mother-in-law to show her the ropes before handing things over. And even after initiation, I still find her feeding my son cake for breakfast and letting him use permanent markers over the carpet, so I keep an eye on her. Well, this time I'm not able to do that, so I asked my husband to take off the first few days post-surgery to help me with stuff I need and to ease his mom into working with the kids. I'm also really tired of being the bad guy with mother-in-law and would really prefer it if he could do more of the limit setting. He knows this. Today, day 2 post-op, I'm able to be up a bit more, and each time I find my husband is nowhere to be found while mother-in-law is doing all the work with the baby and the 4-year-old is running wild. Anyway, I went to lay down and rest. I was down for maybe 20 minutes and all I hear is the baby crying. So I get out of bed to see what's up. Mother-in-law is trying to soothe the teething baby by tossing her into the air and yelling "woo" into her face really loudly. And my husband is playing video games in the basement, again. So I go down and tell him that the baby has been crying for a while. I reminded him that he's supposed to be in charge of helping his parents take care of the kids, that he should be upstairs with them. He got upset that I was pulling him away from his video game, and I told him he could do what he wanted after the baby went to bed in an hour. So he comes upstairs. Between when I went down to talk to him and when he came upstairs, mother-in-law gave the baby a teething ring and baby calmed down. My husband turns to me right in front of his mom and says, "Well, it looks like she's calm now." I shoot him dagger eyes trying to cut him off, but he continued, "And she doesn't seem like she's been crying for half an hour." Now I'm upset. I tell him we need to chat in the bedroom. I lost it. I was yelling at him pretty loudly, asking him why he would put me on the spot like that I was trying to be discreet and had explained to him what I wanted from him while we were alone. I yelled that I was upset because he was taking his anger out on me because I took him away from his video game to care for the baby, and he got petty, making me look like a jerk in front of his mom. That I'm supposed to be in bed, but I'm having to micromanage a husband who thinks he's on vacation now that mom is here to take care of everything. So, am I the jerk? Not the jerk, not even a little bit. Your husband is behaving like a kid. He weaponized incompetence and tried to gaslight you into making you believe you're the unreasonable one. You aren't. This is your time for healing and recovery, and he had one job. He failed. He's embarrassed, and it's all your fault now. Sarcasm. Not the jerk. Ship the grandparents home and hire a healthcare aide for you and a nanny for the kids. Tell hubby to go back to work because he's stressing you out. OP. A girl can dream. Heck, send him back to work, them away, and hire a babysitter. Might be a little more work on the front end, but it's far more likely that work pays off in someone following basic reason. Not the jerk. Big red flag. First, he's prioritizing video games over your kid, then proceeds to play the victim and tries to gaslight you into feeling guilty. Take your kid and leave this man. Not the jerk, but almost. You said it yourself. You are micromanaging. No, they won't do things like you would, but everyone will survive. Take care of yourself and let the other adults take care of the kids in whatever way they will. Your husband's mother will get him if she needs him. They both will consult with you when they run out of ideas. When you get back on your feet, you can get back to doing everything your way. Different isn't wrong. I maliciously complied with my boss's absurd demands and got sweet revenge. Background: I work for a company that has a strict dress code policy. We're supposed to wear business formal attire at all times, and that includes wearing a tie. Now, I'm not a big fan of ties. I find them uncomfortable and unnecessary, but I understand that they're part of the dress code, so I wear them anyway. One day, my boss came up to me and told me that he didn't think my tie was appropriate. Apparently, it was a little too flashy for his taste. He demanded that I go home and change it immediately. I was a little taken aback, but I complied. I went home, changed my tie, and came back to work. The next day, my boss came up to me again and said that my new tie wasn't appropriate either. He said it was too plain and that I needed to wear something more interesting. I was starting to get frustrated at this point, but I complied again. I went home, searched through my ties, and found the most obnoxiously loud tie I could find. The following day, I showed up to work wearing the obnoxious tie. My boss looked at me and shook his head, clearly annoyed. He told me it wasn't appropriate either and demanded that I go home and change it again. That's when I decided to engage in some malicious compliance. I went home, changed my tie again, but this time I came back wearing a bow tie. Not just any bow tie, mind you, but a bright pink, sparkly bow tie. I strutted into the office, feeling like a boss. My boss's face turned bright red when he saw me. He demanded that I take off the bow tie and put on a regular tie, but I just smiled sweetly and reminded him that he had specifically said that I needed to wear something more interesting. And there was nothing more interesting than a bright pink sparkly bow tie. To make a long story short, my boss eventually gave up and let me wear the bow tie. And you know what? It became kind of a running joke around the office. People started complimenting me on my interesting fashion choices, and my boss just had to grin and bear it. Am I the jerk for telling my parents that my wife and I do not want them renaming our kids? My wife and I welcomed twins in November. We struggled to have kids for a long time, 9 years, and had our twins via IVF. It was a long battle to have our babies, and when we chose their names, it was something we not only took seriously, but poured a lot of love into, because we knew they would be the only kids we would name. We chose the first names Ezra and Esme for the twins. Their middle names are more uncommon, so we won't share. But what I will say is, part of what went into the choice for these names was the length. Growing up, I had a long last name, 10 letters, and my parents gave me very formal and lengthy first and middle names, Frederick Lawrence, and I always found my name very stuffy and old-fashioned. I go by a nickname derived from my middle name now. I also took my wife's much simpler last name when we got married. So we announced the name of our twins when they were a day old, and when we announced the names, we were aware my parents might not be in love with them. But I stupidly believed the twins being born would be enough of a deterrent for a negative comment. About a week after they were born, my parents asked what kind of names they had and how could we give them such juvenile and incomplete names. I told them they were neither of those things, and they needed to be more careful about how they spoke about their grandchildren's names. I thought they had listened, but then in January, they started calling them Winifred and Douglas. At first, we weren't positive they were talking about the twins, but then we were celebrating my niece's 10th birthday, and my parents directly addressed my daughter as Winifred, and I knew it was them they were talking to. I told them those were not their names. They said those were nicknames they had given them, and everyone has a nickname, that it's not like we gave them names that could lend themselves to nicknames. I said Ezzy and Essie if they really wanted nicknames. They ignored me, and they continued to use the nicknames. So we decided not to be around, because on top of that, they were telling my siblings that the names they had chosen were better for my kids. My siblings thought they were crazy. My parents tried to see the kids a few times since, and I always told them no. They asked why, and I told them they do not get to see our kids if all they can do is insult their names. My parents accused me of trying to control them and said nicknames are a part of life. I told them what they had done wasn't giving a nickname, it was renaming my kids in their own heads, and my wife and I do not want them renaming them. I also said we will not further encourage the use of the nicknames they gave them. My parents said if I had stuck to the family way of naming babies, none of this would be happening, and they said I was being unfair to them. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. What your parents are doing is bizarre. You can't just make up completely different names for people because you don't like them. It's disrespectful to you and confusing for the kids. I wouldn't want to be around them either. Too young to do my job? Okay. Back in my college days in the late 90s, I worked in my college alumni communication center. In reality, it's a call center where college students work to ask the low-giving alumni for money. The college had professional folks to handle the big mega donors. I, luckily, wasn't a student caller, which seemed awful. I, a sophomore, was, and this was the actual job title, data entry. A quick sidebar. We also had a couple of call coaches who were seniors who would monitor the callers and give them feedback on how to do a better job at asking alumni for money. Typically donations in the $100 to $250 range. When callers made a call, they recorded the outcome of the call on a sheet of paper. I would then collect those sheets and then go to the sole computer in the call center and record the data. Most of the results I entered would be no answer or left a message on a voice machine. Sometimes we got a donation. So I would enter that caller outcome into the computer and somewhere else. The alumni department would generate a donation envelope that was mailed to the alumnus, so the alumnus could then mail a check back to us. Now, about 10% of the donations would be by credit card. At the end of the night, after the callers left, I would spend about 30 minutes processing the credit cards through this dial-up credit card machine. I did this without issue for 2 months, September and October. Now enters Karen, the new boss lady over the call center. She finally notices the extra 30 minutes on my timesheet each day and asks me about it sometime in late October. I tell her that I process the credit cards after everyone leaves for the night. That's how I was trained by the previous data entry person. This upsets Karen, who says I'm far too young to be handling credit card information. Makes clear that I am to stick to my job of only entering the caller's data. Period. End of story. Data entry only. No handling the money. The money is to be handled only by the grown-ups. To be perfectly clear, these were credit card numbers handwritten on a sheet of paper. Absolutely no cash money involved on my end. So, you got it, condescending Karen. I stopped processing the credit card donations. I set them in a pile at the end of the night, right by the credit card machine, and with each passing night, the pile grows and grows. November ends, and this pile is now 250 pages or so thick. It also wasn't my job to ask questions like, who's processing the credit card sheets? Since the month ended and no credit cards were processed, Karen absolutely failed to hit her fundraising goals. She starts to berate the call coaches and the callers for not doing a good enough job. Karen starts spending more time in the call center, watching everything and everyone like a hawk. I continue to do exactly what I was told to. One day, she would offer a prize, like a college hat, and then the next, a long lecture about how everyone shouldn't be lazy. Over the course of December, I keep adding to the pile of unprocessed credit cards. It's a good 500 pages thick by now. Compared to the massive piles of sheets of no answer and left a message, it's not very noticeable. Naturally, someone in the alumni department has noticed that the donations coming in are down about 25% over November and December. This results in me coming back from Christmas break, where I get to meet Cool Chad, the new boss dude over the call center. He asks if my job includes processing credit cards. I told him Karen told me not to, but I was trained to process them. In fact, I'm the only one who has been trained on how to process them. He says, cool, please do process the credit cards. Cool Chad asks if there are any unprocessed credit card sheets. Oh yeah, there are. Cool Chad then asks me if I could get this done over the next couple of weeks. Oh sure, no problem. I spent several hours over a couple of Saturdays processing the credit cards. Cool Chad has the absolute best January ever in the history of the call center. The quotes are paraphrasing. It's been over 25 years. Why is Cool Chad Cool Chad? In February, Cool Chad gave me a raise from $8 an hour to $10 an hour. Thanks, Cool Chad. Karen demands I buy her a second home. My husband and I moved out of our home state almost 5 years ago to start our careers. We were lucky enough to find affordable living arrangements in a neighboring state and were able to buy our own home within a year. Despite our student loan debts, we were responsible with our money and didn't have any additional payments other than our mortgage. We both worked 6 to 7 days a week to maintain our financial stability and pay off our loans, and we don't have kids yet because we're trying to pay down our debts. We have about $280,000 in school debt plus our mortgage, which is about $176,000. However, recently my mother-in-law has been pushing for us to buy a house in our home state that she can use for her occasional visits, which are about 4 to 5 times a year. She wants us to split the mortgage payments between the two of us, but we can't afford this additional expense, especially if we plan to start a family soon. Moreover, we barely have time to maintain our own home, let alone a second one, and renting it out when it's not in use could be an even bigger headache. When my husband brought up the idea of splitting the mortgage payment with me, I immediately put the brakes on it. We needed to take a good hard look at our finances before committing to anything. My husband had never seen what a monthly student loan payment looks like since our federal loans have been frozen since he graduated, and I had been paying mine off even during lockdown. I reminded him that we both work too much already and that I would prefer spending quality time together rather than him working more to make payments for an extra house. My mother-in-law did not take kindly to my refusal and has been cold towards me ever since. However, my husband has agreed to seek financial advice to see the bigger picture. I'm hoping that we can find a solution that works for all parties involved without jeopardizing our financial stability or our future plans to start a family. Long-winded, I know. So, am I the jerk? She only wants to use it when she comes to visit, which is about 4 or 5 times a year? What a horrible waste of money. They have these things called hotels, motels, Airbnbs, etc. Not the jerk. Mother-in-law did not appreciate you not agreeing? Mother-in-law is a huge narcissist to expect you to pay and put her up in a house of luxury when you are a struggling early career family. Do not do this, die on this hill. Not the jerk. Your husband is a jerk for letting his mom think even for a second that this would be a possibility before discussing it with you and the two of you running the numbers together. You're not the bad guy for pointing out the obvious. You two cannot afford to take on additional debt or expenses. He needs to go back to his mother and make it clear that this is not financially feasible and that you are not to blame. The fact that he even considered paying half of the mortgage for his mom to get a second home while you two are nowhere near paying off your first or your student loans is baffling to me. Is he that bad with money or that much of a mama's boy? Either way, pump the brakes on having kids until you two have a very serious talk about finances. Am I the jerk for telling my girlfriend I told you so after her friend tried to get with her? My girlfriend and I have been together for about a year now. My girlfriend has more than a few guy friends, and I'm not one of those guys that thinks men and women can't be friends. However, with 2 of these guys, it's very clear that they want more than just friendship from her. Like clear as day, to the point where I don't get how she doesn't see it. If I can notice just by the weird energy they try to exude when I'm present, she should be able to get it too, right? Wrong. Anytime I've pointed this out, she gets upset with me. She tells me that I am being jealous and reading into things that aren't there. I argue back that I'm just letting her know, and as a guy, I can probably tell much better than she can realize for herself. So, 2 nights ago, she was hanging out with her friends, and this guy was present. From what she told me, they were all drinking, and he said some things that implied he'd want to get with her. She was made uncomfortable by this, and the night ended shortly after. Fast forward to yesterday morning, she got a series of texts apologizing for what he said, and then backpedaling and saying he would treat her so much better than me, and she's wasting her time with me. She of course said no and was upset with him. After she told me, I just read the texts and simply said, "Wow, who could have seen this coming?" a bit sarcastically. This set her off and she got mad. She said that I was being such a huge jerk to her and she had no way of seeing this coming. She's been upset with me since. Am I the jerk? You're the jerk. So someone made your girlfriend uncomfortable, overstepped boundaries. She did everything right, told him to get lost, and instead of comforting her and making sure she's okay, you scold her? Are you insane? She lost a friend, and you tell her she deserved it? Huge jerk. Where was the scolding? He was insensitive, yes. That's not equal to a scolding. He didn't accuse her of doing anything wrong. He was unsurprised and insensitive to her being surprised. It wasn't so much a scolding, but an "I told you so," which in my opinion is much worse, because you can at least pretend that a scolding comes from a place of concern. An "I told you so" is pretty obviously born out of satisfaction of being right, regardless of how the other person was affected. Not the jerk. But come on, man, there was no need to gloat. She's probably also sad that someone she thought of as a friend disrespected her relationship and basically only wanted to hang around with her just to date her. Not the jerk. Most people are saying you're the jerk for the, wow, who could have seen this coming? But the fact is, you were right, and nowhere in your story did she affirm that you had been right all along. If she had said, OP, you were right, and I shouldn't have dismissed your perspective so quickly, you probably wouldn't have felt any need to say, I told you so. What's most important now is that you both work together so that in the future you're playing on the same team instead of me versus her. Not the jerk. Actual men in real life will tell you that you're 100% correct. Most of these guys on Reddit, their opinions don't really count since most of them have never had a girlfriend and they all just compete for karma points on here. But my advice to you, break up with her now. Find someone who's smart enough to know that all of her would-be guy friends are just hoping and waiting for an opportunity to hook up. Find someone who understands how guys actually operate and who isn't looking for attention from dudes as a source of validation. That's how I knew my wife was the one when we met. We both worked at Target at the time, and I kept trying to get her to hang out with me as friends, but she kept turning me down, saying she never hung out with one-on-one guys because they always just tried to get with her. Well, once I asked her if we could try actually dating each other, since that was what I really wanted, she agreed and we were official within a few days. Now we're about to have our third kid and we couldn't be happier. Again, it may not be easy, but find someone who understands the real motive that men will always have. You'll both be much better off. I labeled all of the bottles in the house since my adult kids are idiots. I have 2 of my kids living here with me. One has graduated from college and the other is a junior. I have to purchase medicated shampoo because of a scalp condition. It's by prescription and it's expensive. It also comes in packaging that's meant to be stored upright. Not on its side and definitely not upside down. My daughter has her hair products in the shower and I do not touch them. My son also keeps his Axe body wash, shampoo and conditioner, and woman repellent in the shower. My son also keeps his Axe body wash and shampoo and conditioner in the shower. I also do not touch it since I have zero desire to smell like a high school locker room. I keep my shampoo in there as well since it's my house and I can keep my crap wherever I want. For some reason, the 2 of them cannot understand that not all packaging is meant to be upside down. They've already wasted an entire bottle of my shampoo by storing it upside down after they touched it for some reason. It all dripped out of the spout, which is not engineered for that. I talked to them both about it, and I explained that they should not touch my stuff, and that if they accidentally tip over my shampoo, it was meant to be stored with the lid at the top. I came home last week to find my shampoo leaking out of the bottle again, upside down. I ordered 500 stickers that say, "This side up," with an arrow pointing upward when the words are upright, and I put them on everything in the house that might leak, with my shampoo being literally covered in them. They had friends over last weekend and they noticed that the relish, ketchup, mustard, mayonnaise, everything else were all labeled. My kids were embarrassed when they explained why. They think I'm a jerk for putting labels on everything since they only mess with the shampoo. Since it is an $80 bottle, I said I would take off all the labels if they agree to pay for my shampoo. Thus far, they have declined. Not the jerk. My kids are the same way. Your kids can either learn to leave your stuff alone, put it back the way it was, pay for your medication, or deal with the labels. There are several reasonable choices there. Not the jerk. You gave them a chance, you told them why, and they still did it. Sometimes embarrassment is needed, and this was only in your house, so it's not like you forced their friends to see it. Am I the jerk for making my nephew cry on his birthday party over some gifts? I'm female, 26. My sister, who's 29, has a son, Eric, who's 8 years old. I don't visit a lot. We live far away, but I see them, and most of my family, at birthdays and holidays. When I visit, I usually buy Eric a toy or some candy, as he's my only nephew. To be honest, I like to spoil him, and maybe I am a little bit to blame for what happened too. It was Eric's birthday this week. I visited them, and I brought him a nice toy car. The car was quite big and had lights and stuff. When I got to the party, I wished him a happy birthday and handed him the gift. He opened it and loved it. He said, "So far, this is the best one." which at the time I thought he was just excited. But with what happened later, I kinda get the idea it was intended to be more malicious. Like an hour or so after the party started, when everybody had already arrived, Eric made an announcement to the table in which the adults were sitting. He said that I've won and that I was now the person who he loved the most because my gift was the one he liked the most. I thought it was sweet that he liked it. Then he told my mom that her gift sucked. She brought him a board game, so he didn't love her anymore. He also told one of his friends that next year he won't be invited because his gift was poor. He gifted him a set of dinosaur figures. I think this whole thing of ranking the gifts people got him was pretty crappy. I expected my sister or her husband to say something, but they didn't. They just laughed. So I told Eric that he's not supposed to say that about his gifts. People get him what they can, and he should be grateful with it. He then said he doesn't understand why he has to love people who don't buy him nice gifts. I genuinely can't believe my sister is teaching this BS to her son. His dad told him, yeah, they should give you all the best. So I then again told him that a person's worth is not about how expensive or big the gift they got him was, and that if he thought that way, then I will not be continuing to buy him gifts. Eric started to cry. My sister told me off because I made him cry, but most of my family and some of her in-laws were on my side and told them it was bad to teach their kids such things. Our mom was quite affected and I wanted to leave too, so we left after that. My sister texted me later to call me a jerk for leaving before the candles were blown out and for telling her kid he won't get any more gifts from me. She said I shouldn't make empty threats like that. I said that it's not an empty threat. It's a promise until they teach their kids some manners. Am I wrong for discussing this when my nephew was present? Am I being unreasonable to him since he's young? And would I be wrong in the future if I keep my promise and do not buy him a gift the next year we see each other? Not the jerk. What he did was incredibly rude and hurtful, especially when he said one of his friends wouldn't be invited again. I don't care that he's 8. The other kid was probably around the same age. I'm glad you're not enabling him. It's great if you buy people gifts. I'm a gift giver. But it's one way of showing love, and it's not a reason to be rude if the giver put effort into it. Not the jerk. That kid is lacking discipline and common decency. The fact that the parents are making excuses for it is just awful. They're raising an entitled brat. Your nephew has learned a valuable lesson. If he treats people poorly, then there will be consequences. Good on you for teaching him this when his parents could not. Am I the jerk for locking up my snacks and calling out the thief? I work in an office and share it with a couple of people. I like to snack. I eat through the day instead of having a huge lunch. I just have a little snack and watch an episode of my current show. I always bring it from home on Mondays. This week, it was delicious cheese, crackers, apples, cereal, and oh so wonderful Jell-O. A coworker of mine, let's call her Maddie, from a different office, saw my snacks and knows I snack, mentioned how much I brought and how good it looked. I said thanks and started putting it away in my drawer and fridge, leaving the Jell-O out because I was going to smack on that amazing strawberry jiggle. I left work early on Monday and had left my Jell-O out. I came in Tuesday and my office mate said, "Lock your drawers because people are trying to take your stuff." She's the real MVP. I 100% don't mind sharing when people ask, but to just take my stuff without permission? As an only child, that's a huge no-no for me. My office mates know this. They also bring in snacks for themselves, and we often treat it like elementary school lunch, trading snacks during our lunch period. A different coworker, Steve, came in and tried taking my Jell-O off my desk. Our MVP said, No, don't take her stuff." Steve said, "She shares, I can take it." MVP, No, that snack is from her home. If you want snacks, bring it in like she does." Steve left defeated. Maddie comes in. "Can I have a key to your fridge? I want cheese." MVP once again guarded the goods. I locked up all of my snacks. Maddie comes in a couple hours later, taking Tums out of my drawer. This time, our hero cannot stop her. Tuesday, I come back and lock up all of my snacks. I have to get up and move around constantly. One of the times I wasn't there, once again, Maddie comes creeping. She was not successful. She asks me why I have everything locked. I said, because thieves come in and take stuff without permission. She got really silent and walked away. Though my mom said she might have thought it was okay since I share and said I was a jerk. Reddit, am I? Isn't it basic human knowledge that taking stuff without permission is stealing? Even if I share. Also, everyone has my number. If they're truly hungry, they can text me and ask. Edit. Thank you to everyone that confirmed I was in fact not a jerk. To those criticizing my post for bad English or punctuation, etc., English is my second language, and I typed this out on my phone. Not the jerk. People assuming that they can automatically take what's yours just because you share is garbage behavior. They can ask you if they want something. Maliciously ironic name change. Around the turn of the millennium, I left university to a terrible job market. I ended up working at a big chain multiplex cinema in the city center. The management were generally terrible, but the staff were generally awesome people. As part of the uniform, we had to wear our name badge. Head office had a habit of making typos on these badges, or not sending them at all, so many people would doctor them with stickers to correct them, especially white stickers to allow us to write on the name badge. I was one of those people. I've had 2 different badges, both wrong. After a year or so there, it was announced in a staff meeting that no stickers would be permitted on badges going forward. I asked in front of everyone, and it was confirmed that yes, even if it was misspelled or had the wrong name. At the time, my partner was also working there in the back office. She would often forget her badge and just take one of the spares that had belonged to people who had left, which meant she had a small hoard of these badges with random female names. Now, I'd been there for over a year and never had a correct badge of my own, but the badge doesn't need to be correct, only present with no stickers. As a result, even though I'm very obviously male, I started wearing these various female name badges with no stickers. For the most part, nobody noticed. I had a group of students at box office who asked, "Does your name badge say Rachel?" and henceforth remembered me and would always call me Rachel. On one occasion, I was talking to a manager when this group passed, waving at me, and called out, "Hi, Rachel." This manager then goes, "OP, why are those customers calling you Rachel?" Looking at my badge, this manager realized that it gave my name as Sarah. I explained my malicious compliance and was rewarded with laughter and compliments at my building a good rapport with the customers. Another one of my managers was making a random audit of the staff to ensure compliance and noticed my badge was not in my name. They tried to tell me off for not wearing my own badge, and I pointed out that I had never had a badge with my own right name on it, and we're no longer allowed to fix this with stickers. So I was complying with the rules to wear a badge even if it's not got the right name on it. This manager brought me a badge order form that day, but I'd scored full points. One day, the head of the cinema noticed, and I told them that I had never had a badge with my own right name, and they wouldn't allow me to correct it myself. If they got me a right name badge, I'd happily wear it. When I left the place after 2.5 years, I was still without a correct badge and still in malicious compliance mode. Am I the jerk for not owning a coffee machine or knowing how to make coffee? So growing up, and even now, I've never drank coffee. Never got into it. I don't understand how people drink it. They say you acquire the taste, but I tasted it one time, thought it was gross, never tried it again. I don't really drink much other than water, and I don't need the help getting up early for work because I never built up a dependence to it. My whole family drinks coffee, and most of my friends do, but I've never made it myself. I lived with roommates for a bit, but recently got my own small rented house. I'm the only one who lives there, and there is an extra bedroom. When family comes to visit, they've been staying with me, which is fine. I enjoy them staying with me and enjoy having a house with extra room. This has happened a few times with people that stayed with me, but for this post, I'll use the most recent time. I still live in the same area I grew up in, but my parents moved down to Florida, as many parents who no longer have kids to take care of do. Recently, they stayed with me for 4 days, and it was great. Besides the fact that I do not have a coffee machine, and to them, that is somehow a crime against humanity. They say that even if I don't drink it, I should have a machine and buy coffee, which I think is ridiculous. I have enough things to keep guests comfortable, and if someone wanted coffee, they could take a short drive and get some from any drive-thru. My parents are one of those dead without coffee type of people in the morning, and they brought it up every morning. In the past, a cousin stayed with me, and one morning was like, "Where's the coffee?" and was upset. My parents bought coffee quickly and kept it on the counter, but one morning asked me to make them some coffee, which again, I have no idea how to do that. They think this is rude and that everyone should know how to make coffee. But I said this is like wanting smoothies in the morning and being mad that I don't have a blender. My parents, my cousin, and my aunts, 2 separate occasions, stayed with me and all made coffee comments. But my parents kept it up as if it was some mark against my character. I don't drink alcohol, but nobody's ever whined because there's no beer in my fridge. Edit. This is off topic, but darn, how much coffee are you drinking in the morning? I heard people say that 1 cup from Starbucks is not enough or convenient, and that they go through 3+ cups in the morning. I don't drink that much of anything in the morning. I get out of bed and sip 1.5 glasses of water. No judgment, just wow. So much liquid right away. I saw someone mention 10 cups. Not the jerk. Why would you spend the money and storage space on an appliance you're basically never going to use? Not the jerk. It's your house. It doesn't need to have coffee in it. They can pack their own coffee maker or buy coffee from a drive-thru like you said. It's ridiculous to expect you to keep these things on hand when you have no want or use for them yourself. I also don't drink coffee and wouldn't make it a habit to keep a coffee stock just in case someone decides to visit me. Not the jerk, but I don't see anybody giving some pretty normal advice here. It's normal and polite to have items in your home for guests that are generally expected to be there. It's also not unusual to shop specifically just for items that you know your guests like. For example, we don't drink juice, but we buy orange juice when my in-laws come to town. Coffee is so universal that I would personally have a basic French press around the house and would be buying coffee when guests came to town. I won't say you're the jerk, but you are missing some basic hospitality etiquette that nobody else I see in the comments is telling you. If you're going to host, be a good host. Yeah, but there's a difference between buying and storing supplies that only get used when guests are over and a $5 thing of juice that will be gone by the end of the week. OP's situation is not missing any basic hospitality etiquette at all, in my opinion, but I would agree with you in a different situation. It's just that a permanent thing that won't get used to buy OP in their own house is not OP's responsibility, not the jerk. A cheap coffee maker is $20. A cheap French press costs $10. It's an identical situation to the juice or the wine I stock for people or a dozen other random things I buy for guests. This is just normal adult hosting stuff. I feel like everybody commenting here is either young or doesn't have many guests. Marketing class group project. A few years ago, when I was doing my undergrad, I was in a 300-level marketing class. In the beginning of this class, we were assigned groups that we were supposed to work together throughout the semester. We were to put together a marketing proposal for a local professional sports team and pitch it to them as part of our final grade. Every topic we were learning in class was to be directly applied to our marketing strategy, and the whole semester our professor would basically walk us through from beginning to end on how to put it together. So early on, we divided up roles for each person. One person does market analysis, another person does the most applicable marketing strategies, another person does budgeting, etc. There were about 7 people in our group, so plenty of help to be had for the different parts of the project. Or there should have been at least. We would meet up weekly, and early on, a lot of it was just kind of roundtable discussion about what direction we wanted to take it. But as the semester went on, we started to notice some people were falling behind a bit. Each person falling behind apologized and assured us they would have everything done when it was due, but they were just swamped with other projects, classes, and BS. Come the final week, when we were to put all of our separate parts together and make it all mesh, guess what? They hadn't done anything all semester. They might have had a couple of bullet points on their subject, but it was far from a completed project and basically something any middle schooler could have lined out. 1. They're a professional sports team. 2. There are no other professional sports teams of this sport in the state. 3. They have a large stadium, etc. I was upset. I and a few others in the group had spent a lot of time doing the research and putting it all together in a presentable form that was sure to impress not only my professor, but the marketing team of the affiliated sports group. The other reliable members of my group and I spent a lot of late nights working together to cover for the other teammates' laziness. But alas, it was too little too late, and we were not going to be able to submit something presentable by the deadline. And I sure as heck didn't want a bad grade for the amount of work I put in for not only my portion, but for the portions of those who didn't do anything. I met with my professor during her office hours and asked for a deadline extension, to which she replied, "Absolutely not. I made you aware of this project on day 1 of the semester, so you have, quite literally, had all semester to work on this. Why would you fall short of the deadline and need an extension? I explained the situation to the professor, who graciously understood what I had gone through. She asked me to provide a list of all members of my team, exactly what and how much to the project they had contributed, and gave us an additional 24 hours to submit what we could. She said she would take what I told her into consideration. Come the day of the presentation, our professor was walking around with the marketing professionals we were to present to, and I think she was listening closely to each person's part of the presentation to verify what I had told her. Some of us knocked it out of the park on our portions. Others very quickly glanced over the topics. It was evident who was a contributor and who was a leech. About a week later, once final grades were posted, our team group chat was flooded with, "What on earth? I thought we had a great marketing proposal, but that jerk gave me an F for it," type messages from a few of the members. I got an A in the class. I always despised group projects, almost as much as I despise you, Reddit boy. Am I the jerk for asking to be paid when a family canceled? 5 months ago, a friend of a friend, Claudia, asked me if I could watch her sons while she and her husband attended a wedding out of state. She wanted me to stay 3 days, 2 nights. I babysit a lot to supplement my income and was interested. For overnights, I always charge my usual rate for all waking hours and then a flat rate of $100 per night while they're asleep. This covers me still being on call. I can't leave the house, and if the kids wake up, I'll tend to them. Overall, the price for those 3 days was going to be $840, which I know is a lot, but to me, this is a luxury service. I have 10 years of experience, am expected to clean, cook, and drive for kids' places, as well as sleep at their house. Unlike other jobs, I'm basically working 3 days straight. When I told Claudia, she definitely had sticker shock. But when I broke down the price and she shopped around, she realized I was the cheaper option. I requested the time off work. I don't get paid time off, but I figured I was making more doing this than I would be working 3 days at my other job, so I figured it would be worth it. I babysat in the months since, so I can get to know the kids. I don't have a lot of communication with Claudia's husband, Rick. Last week, he was the one to relieve me and pay. He asked how much I was charging for the wedding weekend. When I told him, he was clearly uncomfortable, but he still said, "We'll see you Friday." This Friday, I got a text from Claudia saying, "Hey, so Richard's decided he wants to take the kids to the wedding after all. We won't need you." I checked with my job, and they have no need for me this weekend as they found coverage. Basically, I'm out 3 days' pay. I texted Claudia and said that she needed to pay me at minimum what I'd make at work in those 3 days, $480. She told me I was being ridiculous, and the whole point is they don't feel it's worth it to pay that much. I explained that I took the time off work. We didn't have a contract, which in hindsight was stupid. I know legally they don't have to, and I'd have no case. I didn't say this, just said the right thing for her to do is to pay. I added if they had told me earlier and I was able to get those shifts back, it would be different. My friend that recommended me to Claudia says I'm being ridiculous. I pointed out that if I had canceled this close, they'd be reasonably upset and done for. Am I the jerk? You did have a contract, it just wasn't in writing. You're not the jerk, and you should try to collect. Treat this as a learning experience. In the future, if you have to take off work, ask for 50% deposit up front. Maybe have a receipt that specifies non-cancelable. Not the jerk. That was super late notice to cancel and cost you 3 days' wages. Also, never babysit for them again, even if they pay you. But don't tell them that until they pay you. Also, if you're in the know with sitters in the area, give them a heads up. Not the jerk. You were prepared to work for them for those days, and they canceled at the last minute. No, you aren't the jerk for asking for the money. However, without a written contract, I wouldn't expect to get a dime from them. No jerks here. You should have communicated better with them that you were still going to charge them if they canceled and given them a deadline for canceling like most other businesses do. If you did not communicate to them that you were going to charge them, they have no obligation to pay you anything. Also, your rates are too high. That's the same amount I pay for 2 kids to attend a full-service daycare for a full week, for goodness sake. OP. Okay, and you also pick up your kids at the end of the day, right? I'm assuming they're there 9 hours at the most. Used to work in one. That's 45 hours a week, and mostly on the assumption that they're there that long. You may not send them the operating hours. Teachers likely get breaks or come in shifts. I would have been working 84 hours on my own call, so even at night, I'm still responsible. I was supposed to watch these kids for 3 days straight. No breaks, no time off. Yes, they'd be asleep overnight, but I was still expected to be there the entire time, tend to them when they were sick, etc. Honestly, it's pretty much a steal, because I'm not charging them my regular rate from when the kids fall asleep to when they wake up. Again, this is a luxury service. You want someone to stay with your kids for 3 days and do pretty much everything you would do, it's not going to be cheap. I accept your judgment on calling me a jerk, but I won't accept you judging my prices and comparing it to daycare when it's not similar at all. What are they getting that's luxury and beyond just normal expected babysitting duties? OP. Well, 1, most babysitters leave when the day or night is over. This is for 3 whole days. I don't know why you keep undermining that. I had to cook all 3 meals, again for 3 days, drive the kids around, take them to activities. They're asking me to give up being in my own home and sleep in theirs and be on call while their kids are asleep. For 3 days, I get no breaks. Again, a regular sitter gets to go home at the end of the day. The main luxury is, you're getting someone for more than a night. This isn't just put the kids to bed, watch TV, and raid the fridge. Not that I do that for normal jobs, but I think it's what a lot picture when they hear the word babysitter. They're doing everything a parent would do for 3 days, no breaks. That's a luxury. I'll always advocate for affordable childcare while the parents are at work. That's not a luxury, that's just getting by. But wanting to go to a wedding without kids? A luxury. Not a bad one to want, but it's going to come at a hefty price when you're expecting someone to work for 3 days straight. You're describing an overnight babysitter. That's not a special luxury service, that's fairly common. You do you though. Good luck. Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard. Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.